What's wrong with her, Maida? What? It's versus me and a convoy versus a Pentuple and this girl.
Everybody ready? All good?
I am, yeah.
Oh, now my camera's not working here.
There we go.
Give me 1 second here. It'll be good.
What's up, gang? We out here on Admiral Gibbs show. Let's go.
What in the hell is happening? There we go.
Sunglasses look so sweet.
You like that? Yeah. Felt like channeling my inner wrestler today.
I was doing that last night.
I know. Well, I'm sure we'll talk about it here. Let me just unmute us, and we're good to go. Well. How's everybody doing today? Am I doing all right?
Yeah.
I just got out of traffic, so I'm seething, but we'll be all right.
That's what I like here. You know, let me just move my camera so you don't see my pile of books I need to reread. All right. Anyway, welcome to Give Me a Break. How's everybody doing? I hope everybody's doing well. It's fucking cold here in Texas, as I'm sure some of my other Texas panelists can attest to. So, you know, we have nothing but to do but be mad about that, I think. And today is a great example. Also, I want to say this is a safe place. There's no wall here. Any DGG refugees, I know there's a lot going on. I will welcome you all with open arms to the Church of Gibbs. It's wild times over here. I know it's crazy times out there. But we're going to provide you with some content, not drama related tonight, and talk about real issues. And I'm excited to have a bunch of guests here to do it. Starting with one of my old friends here, Miss Abby. She's here to tell us all about the URS and why it's good. Take it away. Tell us who you are and where you find you.
I am Abby. You can find me on X at Avers09. I am a corporate executive, so for a large multi-billion-dollar company, and I run a $20 million market for that company. So here in Texas.
Fantastic. Texans, helping Texas. She's helped me out by being here. Moving from one Texan to another Texan. Let's go to Econo Boy.
Hey everyone, I'm Econo Boy. I think Gibbs and I have appeared on a few panels together. So, you know, if you're interested in my stuff, most of the new content I'm making nowadays is on Substack. So Substack, econoboy.substack.com. I think those are how the domains work. Other than that, I do a podcast called Live and Learn and another podcast called 3-1. So, you know, search those up if you're interested in hearing about politics and policy, respectively.
You're using the wrong mic again, Econo Boy.
I was going to say your mic did sound a little strange.
Always accidentally start with the camera mic. All right, 1 second.
Yeah, my camera was doing something weird to start too, but we heard the message at least. So yeah, check him out. He's a big time Live and Learn guy. Real interesting stuff. I hate all of his takes, but he's a fun one to argue with. I love it. Moving on to someone else who I hate all their takes. Non-Fod 420.
Yeah, my name is Klaus Schwab. I have a YouTube channel, Non-Fun. I stream on Twitch, Non-Fun420, Kick Non-Fun420. You can check me out if you want to see me research a bunch of boring stuff and then debate people on it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And finally, we got the head of MAGA headquarters on Twitch. You know,
That's
not
right.
official.
Unofficial head of the unofficial MAGA headquarters over here. I do a lot of streaming on Twitch. That's where you'll find me. I do baseball streams there sometimes with my men's league, and other times politics and just fun stuff. We just hang out, So it's fun.
Hell yeah. So I like to hear. Economy, did you get your mic fixed?
Yeah, we should be good to go.
Fantastic. You want to start us off? I feel like you're probably the most experienced one here. You want to give us your take on the ERS, why it's good, why it's bad? What should we do?
Yeah, I think that, the truth is I don't think that the ERS is, and I don't know that I've seen much rhetoric to the effect that the ERS is, like, calamitously bad or it's just the most horrible thing in the world or anything like that. I think mostly what you've seen is comments from people like me that are kind of memeing on the idea of, like, Department of Government Efficiency, and they're starting another redundant government department. From the research that I've done, most countries tend to organize their tariffs and duties under basically some sort of organization that's already in charge of border enforcement and border patrol. That's what America does. That's what Canada does. The UK does. I looked it up, and I mean, certainly there's some enforcement problems with tariffs, but that's true with any form of taxation. I don't know that starting a dedicated agency would really solve a lot of those problems. And if that dedicated agency is just built out with the people with the expertise from the CBP anyway, I just don't really see the logic in it, especially when, generally speaking, this administration, they're trying to get rid of, like, they think the Department of Education, that specialization isn't worth it. We're going to reassign all those duties, but then we're going to start the External Revenue Service. I don't know. It just seems a little bit odd to me, but I'm sure that's amongst the most minor of things that Trump is planning on doing that I'll say, at the very least, it's a little bit odd.
All right, thank you so much. Let's move to you, Pentemple. Give us the MAGA take.
All right, I know you wanted me to come prepared, so I wrote my opening statement on my lunch break today, and I hope you're proud of me.
I'm very proud.
Yeah, so forgive me if it's a little reading, but Americans are overtaxed, and clearly our government is over-relying on taxes and the IRS for revenue collection. Foreign countries benefit greatly from accessing our markets, and they would pay tariffs to access these markets. They can try to pass those costs off to consumers, but for products that are made in the U.S., it's more likely they'll have to eat the cost of the tariffs. All of these tariffs will have to be implemented carefully and strategically and individually, which is what the ERS would be for. So I won't play expert here and argue about what individual specific tariffs, but generally speaking, when implemented correctly, these tariffs will be revenue generated from foreign profits being made in our country. There are a lot of variables depending on the product being imported, from whether it's a necessity or a market good or something like AirPods, or what level of volatility people expect in those products. But and probably dozens of other variables related to markets that I just don't know about. But the ERS will allow the government to more effectively and clearly collect tariff revenue, which will alleviate the burden on the taxpayer. It'll also allow for very strategic and intentional moves, making sure that as we transition into a more tariff-based system, we maintain those positive relationships with our allies. Like I said, these tariffs will have to be very carefully and individually implemented, and that's what the ERS would be able to professionally handle. If we have an IRS for internal revenue, I think it only makes sense that as we transition to a system that also relies on external revenue, that we have an ERS. Tariffs are an untapped source of revenue. Even if you think the American government isn't overtaxing the American taxpayer, I think the ERS is a chance at bringing enough change in our system and actually start reversing our national debt and alleviating the burden on the taxpayer.
All right, thank you so much. Non-fun.
Yeah, well, first I'd like to apologize to my mom. She told me to be nicer in debates, and I intend on being anything but, okay? At least one of my opponents here has zero, if not a negative understanding of economics, yet he defends tariffs with a high level of conviction. I intend to showcase his cluelessness, not just the technical economic terms, but even the basic rules of economics in this debate. This lack of understanding is to be expected, however, as anyone who falls for Trump's mercantilist rhetoric is clearly misinformed about the foundation of economics. Both theory and empirical evidence suggest that trade and trade deficits don't decrease net jobs, they don't reduce wages, they lead to increased productivity, and conversely, theory and evidence both demonstrate that tariffs increase prices, they decrease productivity, they decrease net jobs, and often fail to accomplish even their misguided goals to reduce a trade deficit or bring manufacturing back. Tariffs are not a particularly efficient way to raise revenue. Whatever problems we might have with the income tax, it at least does not invite foreign nations to retaliate upon us. If we are to discuss the use of tariffs as a negotiation tool to make other countries lower their trade barriers, it should be noted that these temporary tariffs cannot be used as a source of long-term revenue that finances these other tax cuts. Tariffs that raise revenue also aren't effective at bringing manufacturing back, as the more consumers respond to price increases by purchasing domestic products, the less consumers spend on the tariffed foreign goods that bring in the revenue. Second, I would like the concession that free trade is an overall good, and then we can discuss the best ways to get there. I'm not inclined to think that Trump actually wants to use them just as a negotiation tool, however, since he constantly rants that trade deficits are subsidies and claims that foreign countries pay tariffs, whilst naming the agency that collects them the External Revenue Service. Theory and evidence are definitively on our side, and the only way at least one of my opponents sees otherwise is through invincible ignorance. That's why I'm comfortable predicting quintuple, and likely my other opponent will not seriously engage with any of the empirical evidence or theory, nor will they be able to demonstrate that these tariffs actually provide a net benefit, and instead will just hyper-focus on some localized losses whilst making statements and sound absurd to anyone with even a basic high school level knowledge of economics. Who knows, maybe quintuple will even start muting me and calling me a kid on Google again, despite the fact that I've streamed all my research and my notes are publicly available. Doing so would demonstrate the lack of maturity and knowledge required to defend his position.
All right. Well, that was the nice take of the night so far. All right. Abby, follow that one up.
Well, had I realized coming into this that we were going to be writing our statements with ChatGPT, I would have done that, but I didn't get that hint. So instead, I'm going to go in and go after a couple things that you said there. And you're talking about tariffs and tariffs and tariffs. I was also under the understanding that this was going to be for the External Revenue Service, not tariffs specifically, but why we need the ERS to get those tariffs. So I think you bring it back to the ERS in general. The main problem that people are commenting on with ERS is it's redundant. It's redundant, we don't need it, blah, blah, blah. And I think that's because they don't typically understand where it comes from. It looks like you guys all have an understanding. It's Customs and Border Patrol. And with the fact that they're going to be incredibly busy deporting millions of people over the next couple years, I think it's imperative that we do have an External Revenue Service with the ultimate goal of getting rid of the IRS in general and not taxing the American people. If you think about why America was founded to begin with, I mean, you go all the way back to the Boston Tea Party. They didn't want to be taxed without representation, and then it was going to be no tax. And it was no tax up until about World War I. And then all of a sudden, income tax comes in and 3%. It's now for everybody, up to 40% in some cases, and it's ridiculous. We should have other countries paying for those things. It also increases the chance of those companies deciding to just build the product in America, go back to manufacturing things here as we should, especially as robots and technology come further into the future. We should bring those manufacturing jobs back while we can to produce it faster, especially with the plans to deregulate.
All right, fantastic. Stick 'em, boys and girls.
Okay, well, I mean, the reason I'm bringing up tariffs is because the entire point of the IRS is to implement tariffs, and I think tariffs are a bad way of raising revenue. And I would also ask you, you do recognize that there's a direct trade-off between the number of manufacturing jobs we bring back with tariffs, right, and the amount of revenue tariffs raise, right?
Well, but if you get rid of IRS, also, that's another stream of revenue that the American people will have. So it may raise prices just a little bit. It may bring back all these jobs, but it's better for us to have the jobs here. We may have to pay more for items. We're already paying more for items without getting the jobs. So we might as well, if we're going to pay more for items anyways, and we're going to have this indefinite increase in prices, which bringing energy back, you can argue that those prices are going to go down. It will all eventually even out. I don't see the issue.
So, I mean, first of all, we're already energy independent. And before I respond to, the jobs, having jobs here argument, you do recognize the more that consumers respond to the price increase, right, by buying domestic goods that make these jobs here, the less we bring in revenue. You do recognize there's a direct trade-off there, right? You have to recognize that.
All of these things
Wait,
you're talking
don't
about.
bail her out, Pentuple. Don't bail her out, Pentuple. Don't bail her out. No, shut up. Don't bail her out. I need her to answer that.
No, this is exactly where we knew you would go, because you want to go into specific and try to get gotchas on numbers. This is what the ERS would have professionals handling and figuring out. How much can this tariff be? What products need to be tariffed? Which products are we producing in America that we need to help out these businesses? These aren't just blanket ideas that Twitch streamers are going to throw out. These are going to be professionals who are handling this. So you can dive into this all you want. Nobody's going to want to deal with it or engage with it.
Okay, first of all,
I
no,
don't
you
think
don't
that,
give a... Okay, let her contemplate, sure.
Yeah, I don't think that Trump is... I don't think that the 25% number or the 20% number or the 100% number or the 10% number, I don't know that Trump is engaging in a lot of professional technical discourse when he's throwing out the amounts that we should tariff certain products. I mean, look at
that we're getting to see. That's the public watching, right? Do you think he's doing the same thing when he's with like advisors and teams who are deciding?
I don't think Trump has a
Obviously, this
sophisticated
conversation-
understanding of literally almost anything that he talks about. Just to answer your question, like, no, I don't
Trump's
think
dumb.
that.
Wait,
Sorry, say that again. Do I think
Yeah.
You guys
do I
just
think Trump is dumb?
and doesn't know how to do this because what we're
I
arguing
think Trump is dumb and does not know how to do this.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, fortunately, that's what the ERS would be formed to do. It's not. We wouldn't be asking.
I mean, look, I'm not saying that the ERS is not staffed with professionals. Like the CBP, I'm sure there's many professional economists who, I guess I don't know if there's economists, but I assume there's many professionals who understand tariff policy quite well that work at the CBP. But that's kind of my whole point about the ERS and the implementation of the ERS, right? Is that like we've already got these people who seem to have an expertise at collecting tariff revenue.
We'll probably move them from that. It could probably be the same people in the same departments. We just restructure it, right? I don't know how the government does
What's
this.
the benefit
right?
of that?
If you're saying we have offices that already handle this, they would probably just become the ERS, right?
Well, right,
most of
but
the
if we're just
offices that
saying-
handle it are the customs department anyway. It's Customs and Border Patrol. So shouldn't Customs and Border Patrol, if they can really focus on Border Patrol, which clearly we need to do, I mean that would be better anyway.
Abby made the
It's not a
Aber made the
competition
point.
making the name of the agency. It doesn't matter. I would if we get what we're looking to do isn't going to depend on what the name of the agency is. But I do think that forming the ERS allows us to have a team where it's like this team is focused on accessing that untapped revenue in foreign profits being made in our markets. Because that's all we're talking about. That you accessing that revenue will help alleviate the burden on the taxpayer. That is, I think, undeniably very large.
What were you going to
How's
say
it-
to economically? Then I'll go to you, not fun.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think that the fundamental argument is basically just like, hey, we're just going to put these people in a different building and call it the ERS building. I mean, again, I don't think, and I said in my opening, like, I don't think that that's the most offensive idea, but I think that the issue is that the framing of this is that, number one, it's some sort of like particularly good idea to do. And then number two, again, I just do think that it's funny that, okay, well, we don't actually need specialized people in the federal government, particularly focused on education, right? We can just completely get rid of the education department. Like, that's not a specialized form of knowledge that we need compartmentally in our system. But we do need this for tariff, right? Like, again, like,
This is a revenue collection.
We've had
That's a much
hundreds.
different function than.
So we actually have like a whole agency in charge of revenue collection. I mean, it would make more sense if Trump said, "Hey, now the IRS is in charge of this. They're going to handle this too. Like these are tax professionals."
The
This could make,
IERS
like
or
even that
something
would
like
make
that.
more sense.
I'm going to give it to Nonfog. I want to ask. I'm going to let Nonfog go here, but I want to ask a question to like my conservatives. Y'all can think about while he responds. I'm a conservative, right? And I think something Abby said earlier appeals to me, right? I like the idea of no IRS, right? No taxes sounds great, and maybe getting all our revenue from the ERS. However, if we're in a situation, I'm a little bit fearful, right? Because I see a situation where we never get rid of the IRS, and now we have the IRS and the ERS. Is this like a concern that y'all consider about like more governmental power? That's all I just want y'all to ponder. Non-fun, go ahead, and then one of y'all two can take it from there.
Yeah, I mean, it's just obviously absurd that we're going to get all of our revenue from the ERS. I mean, first of all, again, I don't think even if we could do that, I don't think that's a good idea. But B, like the income tax raises like $2 trillion a year. You're going to raise, even with 20% universal tariffs, you're going to raise at most like $600 billion. Like you're not even going to be able to supplement the income tax.
All right.
I'm personally more of a fan of the idea of doing a federal sales tax. And that way, all of the illegal immigrants that the Democrats have brought in can pay their fair share in taxes too when they purchase products. So I'm thinking that's kind of the future and where that should go. But that's just my personal opinion on fixing that issue you're talking about.
It's Temple.
I don't think we have to ultimately replace the IRS with the ERS. I think they could serve two distinct functions, but they probably could be the IERS. I just thought of that like 5 minutes ago. But ultimately, I do think that the idea of transitioning from our government's going to rely on and just dip into the taxpayers' money as opposed to just like this pretty pool of money over here, this untapped revenue in foreign profits being made in our markets. I just think that transitioning in that direction is one of the ways that we alleviate the tax burden, one of the ways that we catch up on our revenue.
If we want to kind of change the topic from like the functionings of the ERS specifically and just talk about, okay, like the efficacy of different forms of taxation. Look, if if what you're saying is actually your priority, right? Like, okay, Pentuple, like, hey, we want to take money from these like foreign corporations and we want to distribute it to our own citizens. We already know for a fact there's a 1,000,000,000% better way to do that. In Norway,
What is
have
it? What's the better way?
In Norway, they have
DBCFT,
something
baby.
called a well, DBCFT is one way, but in Norway they have something called a sovereign wealth fund, right? Where they basically, take a bunch of sort of domestic resource rent, and then they use that money to buy a bunch of foreign equities and corporations. And so now you don't have a compliance problem at all, right? Foreign companies will willingly give you part of their profit share because you own part of their company. And using this method, right, which is not distortionary, which doesn't affect the domestic economy, which gives literally
hold on.
thousands.
Let me ask you a question. Can you just clarify this? Yeah, sure. I just want you. I'd like to clarify because you seem to be more in depth in knowledge of when Denmark or wherever does the sovereign wealth fund. I'm under the assumption they naturalize this natural industry. Is that correct?
Norway they have a national oil company, but they also have a series of taxes in order to scrape off the top of essentially their resource wealth as well. Yeah.
Okay.
And look, I mean, I think that, and this is one of the reasons why I say this is dumb policy from the Trump administration is because, look, I don't think that's unreasonable logic. Hey, the United States is such an influential company or such an influential country. Shouldn't the United States have a piece of sort of international trade and international transactions in general? It's like that fundamental logic. I don't have a huge problem with that logic. But tariffs and the ERS are just like the worst, most evidentially sort of void ways to actually accomplish that. And the last thing that I was going to say, not a problem, but before Gibbs asked me a question, was that Norway, through doing this within one generation, now has an amount of corporate capital income from foreign corporations that equals about a third of their government spending. In America, that would be the equivalent of about $2 trillion. And again, that doesn't destroy the economy. It doesn't lead to huge allocative inefficiency problems like tariffs do. But the reason why I say Trump is stupid and doesn't understand what the fuck he's talking about is because he's never suggested that. He's never come close to suggesting anything so coherent. He's reliant on a tax policy of basically the early 1900s. There's a reason we moved away from that tax policy. It just simply isn't optimal. It's not the best way to do things.
So let me just ask this to y'all then. All right, so I think you kind of clarified. You just think that you're not necessarily inherently opposed, Economoid, to the idea of like tariffs and the External Revenue Service, like in and of itself. Like you just think that's a way less efficient way compared to
every tax has its advantages and disadvantages. Tariffs are just a particularly terrible, awful, no good form of taxation.
All right, so like I know that non-fawn is very, very much against tariffs as a whole, right? So I'm gonna let him like maybe give a spiel, and then I know y'all. I'll let the righties go, and y'all can respond to everything y'all just heard both at once because I feel it's easier that way. So go ahead, non-fawn.
What do you want me to spiel about? I mean, I don't like
whatever you got.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like, again, whatever problems we have with domestic tax policy. Tariffs are especially bad because they invite foreign retaliation. They lead to retaliatory tariffs on us that like hurt us. They're also, I mean, there are other issues. Obviously, they're regressive. They're distortionary. I don't believe that they have the impact. I don't believe that they increase net jobs like I believe, like presumably these people do. So there's all of that, and I don't think it's good to have an agency specifically just to put in like the worst form of taxation. Like,
okay, conservatives, my fellow conservatives, y'all have responses to these things?
I don't know. I'm not really sold that tariffs don't work. We've been using tariffs and we have tariffs right now.
Okay.
They're accessing our markets.
Wait, Pentuple, here's a question. Do you have any study, a single study published in a peer-reviewed journal that suggests that tariffs lead to a net job increase?
No.
No, so you don't know that at all.
Well, so let me.
He needs you to look it up right now. So go to Google right now and go find a source.
So look, all right, I'll play a little devil's advocate for you for a second here. I'll save somebody.
You keep making points. Non-fond there, real quick. Sorry, Gibbs, but you're making points about like, if the tax is if the tariff's too high. Like these are things that are true if the tariffs aren't implemented correctly. Like we've been saying, you can't just blindly implement these tariffs.
What's a correctly implemented tariff?
You can improve American manufacturing if you drive the market to purchase American products. I don't know why that doesn't just make sense. Like you increase the cost of the foreign good, giving a market advantage to the American-made good. More people buy the American-made good, creating more demand for that good, increasing the manufacturing for that good. Why doesn't that make sense? I'm not an economist, so that's why I'm Econo Boy to help maybe explain this to someone who's just not an economist. But I would like Econo Boy to answer. I really don't care what you think about anything non-pod.
Oh, okay. I have the answer, but okay.
I mean, look, obviously, I'm not going to say anything substantially differently than what Non-Fon's going to say. I mean, look, the reason this is, I released an article today that speaks to some of this frustration.
Well, what was wrong? Where did it break down with what I said? Like, you give a market advantage to the American manufactured good because the tariff doesn't apply to them, right?
Yeah, so
they try to pass off the cost to the customer, or they have to eat it to continue competing in that market. Where am I getting this chain of events wrong? Just generally speaking.
If they pass on the cost to the customer, then I don't know we can really say that the American consumer is like saving money or not paying taxation
against the American product if they try to pass it off to the American consumer.
I don't think Non-Fon or
and the American manufactured one is not, right?
I don't think Non-Fon or I would argue that tariffs are a bad way to establish autarky, right? If you want just a completely trade independent economy, then putting tariffs at 1,000% on everything is a great way to do that.
In place that would disadvantage or like harm these countries we're doing trade with. Like I said, we have to maintain these like positive trade relations, but we absolutely can say, hey, you need to pay a little bit when you're making this much money out of our markets. So when this much money is leaving our market on this product that you're selling, and you're cutting off on American manufacturing. I mean, these things just seem like obvious to me, but I want you to explain economically, where is that breaking down?
So it's breaking down because it doesn't really have the distributional effects or the spillover effects that you think it does, right? So number one, it is true that if you tariff certain goods, the people within domestic industries who produce those goods are advantaged by that. You know, the capitalists in the foreign countries are disadvantaged and the capitalists in the domestic country are advantaged. But all of these other spillover effects that we might expect, it raises wages and it reinvigorates American manufacturing, those are not really well bore out, especially when we start to think about the actual spillover effects, which is basically people just pay a lot more for basic goods and services that they otherwise wouldn't pay for, right? Or they would pay a lot lower rate at the very least, right? That's what you end up having. You make people a lot poorer. Whereas what I'm talking about and the alternative that I've proposed doesn't make people poorer at all, right? We end up basically making people significantly wealthier without any of these distortionary effects. And it's just smarter, better policy. Again, I know it was a little bit shocking for you when I said Trump is a complete idiot that doesn't understand what he's talking about. But the reason why I said that was because, again, Trump does not think thoughts like this. He doesn't consider things like this.
I mean,
right?
you can say that, but no one can possibly. How am I supposed to believe you?
That's what I had a
Hold on,
comment on specifically. That's specifically
why do you say things like that?
I explained why I think Trump is stupid.
Disagree with the way you view that, just based on I see how you can see that, right? But you also have to understand that Trump, for a very, very long time, has played a character, and he continues to play that character to his advantage. Almost every day, and every time he's in front of that camera, and sometimes it works for him and a lot of times it doesn't, because he says dumb stuff and he gets in trouble for it, right? And sometimes he talks about things he doesn't know exactly what he's talking about.
Can I ask a question?
He knows a piece of what he's talking about.
Do you think that when Trump, you cannot possibly believe that when Trump acts like a complete bumbling moron, that is, you think that's actually just an act? You think actually he's a genius? He's playing a character. No. Okay.
No,
I really appreciate that you said that.
Look, yeah. I think he leans into it. And I think he leans into it intentionally because he has that tendency to stumble, fumble, say things that don't come out right. So I think he's leaned entirely into that character and it works for him. And I think he's now using that character when it comes to tariffs. Because he's throwing out tariffs as a threat to millions of people using social media. He's literally trolling foreign countries so that they don't know kind of what they're getting. He's got this reputation for being volatile. He's got this reputation for he's just going to do all of this stuff. And I think there is a combination of, yes, tariffs work, but we need the professionals to take care of that, the people who do know stuff about it. Does Trump know any and everything about tariffs? Absolutely not. Does he know as much as you do about tariffs? Probably not. He's a real estate guy.
Okay, wait, real quick. Can
Sure, Bob. Then I would have moved it somewhere. But go ahead.
Sure. Okay. Just real quick. I need to respond to Fintel. Okay. There are very clear mechanisms by which tariffs would actually hurt manufacturing in aggregate, even if you help some specific businesses within manufacturing. So, for example, you appreciate exchange rates. Tariffs typically lead to the price of the dollar in foreign markets increasing. Who do you think that hurts? That hurts American exporters who sell their products overseas. A lot of manufacturing companies export products. There was a study done on this.
You should work for the
no
ERS.
studies. You have nothing to back this up. It's just complete conjecture. Oh, I think tariffs work because I feel like it. You have nothing to back it up. There is a study that actually
I still haven't really understood why the price going up doesn't decrease the demand for that product. Isn't that like a common
I'm
baseline
telling you
of
why,
economic
even if that
understanding?
happens, you can
Like
still
the price
hurt
of something goes
manufacturing
up,
in
the demand
aggregate.
goes down.
So this
You
is
can
what
still
I'm saying.
just
the
real quick,
relative
okay?
demand in the market.
So you lead to exchange rate appreciation,
Dude,
and also
I don't.
you
What
tariff
have you been
intermediate
saying this
goods.
whole time?
Hold on,
You speak
hold
like
on.
a million words a minute, and nothing you've
Let me
said makes any
let me
sense.
let me
I just want to listen to Econo Boy.
Let me just move this a little bit here. Right. All right. So, I also agree that Trump leans into the character. I don't know how much is real, how much is not. But whether I look at this last election, he reminds me of a guy you talk to at the bar about politics. Right. Like it's like you can imagine him, and that gets people elected for good or bad thing. But that being said, I think he's very effective at hiring people around him, and at least in his real world, to get stuff done. Sometimes, most of the time, effectively. Sometimes he's got some big losses, but whatever. That being said, though, I kind of want to come back to something you said, Econo Boy. Whenever you brought up Norway and how they do the nationalization of their things and how they have sovereign wealth fund. Even if we look at that, I would say look at the United States, right? I don't know that we can comparably compare. It's a fair comparison to compare us to a homogeneous, what's the word I'm looking for, where they're all one race in their place, they're all from one background, they have very little immigration there, they have special qualities, and there's maybe 60 million people of them total, when we're 3-4 times that big. I don't know how many people live in Norway, right? It's a small country comparatively. Do you think in this situation, that's a fair comparison? Because it doesn't seem to me to be a fair comparison. Expect the same revenue kind of share system to work for what we got going on over here with all the other mitigating factors. Do you think the political situation plays a role in this, or what's your thoughts here?
So I don't think that the American mind is incapable of implementing a Norwegian-like system of resource management. We have to think about mechanically what they do, right? So we hear this argument a lot. Oh, that's a small country. We just can't do what they do. And this argument it just doesn't make sense, right? At any stage, it just doesn't make sense. Number one, there's economies of scale to things. Typically, centralization and scale of centralization for governments would lead to a more efficient ability to do things, not less. Forget about that, even if you don't buy that, and it's it's hard to do these things. America has a lot of resource wealth. The taxes and the duties that would be imposed on resource producers would be taxing economic rents, and that's, obviously there's some economic jargon going on here, but basically that's a tax on unproductive activity, so you're not affecting production. There's nothing actually distortionary about these various forms of taxation. And with regards to forming a state-owned enterprise, some people will make, the United States couldn't form a state-owned enterprise. This isn't a complicated process, right? The United States, if they wanted to form a state-owned oil company, now I'm not saying that the United States should necessarily do exactly what Norway does, but there are various ways to socialize resource rents. And if the U.S. wanted to form a state-owned oil company, they could raise the money with, either seniorage, or they could raise tax revenue, or, however they wanted to do it, frankly. I mean, the United States have various mechanisms by which they can raise a ton of money, clearly. And they could buy out the stock of a currently existing oil company, just like any other private investor could do. And then that oil company becomes the American oil company, and it just runs literally completely the same. The only difference is that the equity is owned by the government.
Is doing that mutually exclusive with implementing tariffs? We could, because I don't think tariffs single-handedly save our country from $40 trillion of debt, but I do think it's going to get us moving in the right direction. And when you talk about retaliatory tariffs, we don't sell cars. I just Googled this. We have tariffs on our cars that are sold in Europe, and in Europe we don't see a lot of Chevys and Fords and stuff like that. So
right.
Should we implement those retaliatory tariffs if you think that other countries will apply them to us?
Pentuple. So the argument is not okay. Nanfan and I are not making the argument that tariffs don't reduce demand for foreign goods. They obviously do. The question is whether or not that's desirable. Okay, so let's just use a basic example, okay? Let's say that China just makes better shit. let's just say that that's true. Maybe they do. I'm assuming that there are some things that Chinese manufacturers make that are better than what Americans can make. Just like how I would assume that we shouldn't do all of our business out of the state of Texas. I'm sure that people in Oregon, Washington, California. Well, look, most of our business, but not all of it, right? I mean, like, just geographically, because of specialization in industry, cultural reasons, because of what they might have been raised in and the desires that they have, there are reasons that people in other places make better things than people in current places that you might live, right? And so there's a reason why we wouldn't necessarily want to say, hey, this good comes from China, why don't we just make it here? Well, the answer is because we just might not be able to make it as well as they do because they have a specialization that we don't.
So,
studying.
Let me move this a little bit.
That's what the role would be.
I think this is so. I think we're also not focusing on the political aspect, like the diplomatic aspect of this, as much as I think we should personally. And so I guess I'm going to move it there a little bit. Non-thought here. I know he hates tariffs. And he's basically, you argued you're a globalist before. I'll let him correct me or whatever. He thinks global trade's good, yada, yada. Now, from a conservative standpoint, I see something like what's happening with Panama as atrocious, where they're getting, I don't know, 60, 70% of their revenue from what I think was a terrible trade deal back with, when they took the canal back under, what is that, Carter? Like, I'm not a fan. I looked it up. They're getting like 55,000 a ton. That's on some of these ships. That's outrageous, considering we make up like 70% of their trade. What do you say to people that are saying that ERS is a signal to these countries that hey, we're not playing around. We're going to implement things to benefit us diplomatically. This is a threat. It's not just an economic tool. Do you think that's a viable thing, or is that going to crash the economy? We'll start with Abby here. Go ahead.
I think that's a part of it. I think what everyone wants to do is they want to always pick out one thing and say this is the thing, and it's going to be the thing that kills all of us, or makes us all broke, or ruins the country, or tanks the country. Or they pick out this one thing and say, okay, because of this one thing, the whole thing is trash. Throwing out the baby with the bathwater. But what good negotiation is, and that is one thing Donald Trump is very good at, is negotiating. And I think that's the largest piece of what the tariffs actually are. Now, are there going to be tariffs implemented? Absolutely. He did it the last time he was president. We can guarantee that will happen. But is it going to be like 150% tariffs like he will sometimes say? No, right? But you can imagine him just mentioning tariffing Canada and Mexico made Justin Trudeau pinch his butt cheeks so hard he jumped on the first flight he could to Mar-a-Lago to go grovel and ended up becoming the governor of the 51st state. So it was like a laughing stock, and that's my whole point of he trolls specifically to get what he wants. And that's a large part of what's going on with his tariff rhetoric.
But that's clearly not actually what's going on at all, in part because you guys started this debate not by saying that tariffs are important for geostrategic reasons. Again, Nonfon and I don't know about Nonfon, but we'd probably agree that there are instances where, for moral reasons, for geostrategic reasons, that you'd want to selectively institute tariffs. But that's literally not at all what Trump has been talking about. He's been talking about what you guys have been talking about, which is replacing huge parts of the tax code with tariffs, right? That's not strategic.
Yeah, again, you can't simultaneously say these are only going to be
an agency that handles it instead. And instead of having Trump executive deal with these tariffs, wouldn't you like to have an agency with professionals actually dealing with it?
You're moving all over the place. We've moved beyond the ERS. We're talking about.
I'm the only one who's staying on the ERS the whole time.
Well, we literally specifically moved off of the ERS. So that's clearly not.
We don't need to talk about Donald Trump. That's boring, right?
Well,
These been in your head for years. Is that over yet?
Well, just to be clear, you said, you did admit that you're not prepared to have this conversation about, I haven't looked it up, I don't know much, it just seems like it makes sense. That's fair enough. But
specific tariff. I don't think anyone in this channel is going to be in that position. No offense. It's just none of us are global economic experts that can tell you the downwind and downfalls of every single tariff that we could possibly implement. These are going to be things that are studied, and there's going to be memorandums written detailing every single possible consequence of this level tariff.
These things have already been studied. The professionals who have studied this, you reject. You don't read them. You haven't read them. You have no plans to read them. So shut the fuck up, Pentuple. You have no idea what you're talking about.
avoid
Just
W.
admit it.
Forming the ERS. We don't even need. Like, what do you want? We don't even need to hear what you have to say. It's like a charity to listen to you anyway. We're forming the ERS.
I agree.
Like, you guys are
Good one.
like contradicting yourself. All you guys earlier were like, all you guys earlier were like,
All right, hold on. All right,
all you guys are, yeah, just real quick. All you guys earlier said, you know, we're gonna use the ERS to start moving away from the IRS. We're gonna use the ERS to
that was one proposal. I don't know.
Sure,
if that
but
was
now everyone is saying like these are actually just bluffs to get countries to negotiate. Like any
No,
tariff
that's
that
not
uses
what I
into
said. That's not what I said. I actually said it's a
You
piece
said tariff
of
uses
it, right?
Trump uses
It's a
extreme
piece of it,
rhetoric.
right? Didn't I say it's a piece of it?
Yeah,
You can use
You
tariffs
can't
to.
say, see, that's my whole point of throw the baby out with the bathwater. You're trying to be like, no, it's completely this. No, that's a piece
Well, you
of
understand there is going to be a trade-off between how long a tariff is in place, like if it's used as a negotiating tool, and how much revenue that tariff raises, right?
This is like
it's
we keep saying the same thing. It's like things that like the professionals would figure out. We're not saying to blindly implement it. We're not debating. Hey, we should just blindly implement a 25% tariff on all goods. That's not what we're
That's what Trump
talking
is
about.
saying.
Let me hold on. Let me take over here real quick. I want to hold on.
We can this revenue
You're
of
breaking up.
foreign profits being made in our markets. It's that simple. Like you can dive into the randoms all you want, but that's not like what we're here to debate.
All right,
Nobody's
so
here to debate that. You don't know what you're talking about either. None of you guys know what you're talking about either. You don't know the downfalls of every single different level of. These are things that there will be memorandums that are like 20 pages written by the ERS agents, and you'll get to see them one day. Because guess what? We live in my timeline now, bitch.
He threw it over. Gibbs. He threw out. He's like, oh, what's a long unreadable report? Oh, 20 pages. That's an inconceivable length of a report.
Tariff? Yeah, I would think that'd probably cover a good bit of it. For one tariff?
Like,
Oh, so one thing.
one
By the way,
tariff,
hold on. I'm taking over, guys. Stop.
Make it 100 pages. Send the interns back to make it 130.
how many pages do you think I've read?
Hold on. Stop. Thank you. One, Pentuple. You got like it's an echo. I think it's coming through, and maybe your mic's gain is too high, and it's catching your headset, and that's why I think you're cutting
Might
out.
be the case.
Yeah,
Is
I think so. Say something while I'm talking. Like hello.
We won, and we're getting ERS anyway.
Yeah, cool. I think it's fixed. All right. Yeah. So let me just. Holy shit, guys. All right.
The best part is we can all reconvene in a year after the ERS has been formed
So,
and taxes are down because we're now paying.
Wait,
some of our revenues
Pentuple,
being
to be
collected
clear,
there.
Hold on,
we would
hold on,
never
stop,
accept.
stop,
You don't like.
stop. Thank you. We'll come back to that. I know y'all want to go at each other again in a second, but I'm running the show. I want to go somewhere else with this real quick. Just for funsies, humor me, please. All right, so Abby brought this up, and y'all kind of talked about it, and then y'all glossed over it, and it's really where I wanted to go. And so thank you, Abby, for picking this up. She brought this up in her opening, or I don't know if it was an opening, but earlier, about Trump being volatile, right? The people not knowing what to say. And y'all have called it a bluff. I took umbrage with this recently. Where I said it's not a bluff. I think that he's willing to do what it takes, right? And that's kind of where these countries are like, they don't know what he's willing to do. And it's usually as a negotiating tool to like get him by the balls. Like I envisioned a scenario yesterday on a panel where basically he threatened Mexico with a tariff. And I think in this case, the ERS would be the agency that would go and try to collect this, right? And then basically, because he threatened them, they agreed to remain in Mexico. Would you not agree that this is worth having as an effective negotiation tool if the goal is not always the monetary gain or the economic gain non-farm, or are you just that focused on the economic gain? What is?
I mean, I would like the concession. I would like the concession that one, we should want free trade, and this is just a way to get to free trade or a way to get countries to negotiate with us. And two,
countries are taking advantage.
I think if there was a mythical global alliance and everyone came together in the whole world and held hands and sang kumbaya and decided, yes, tariffs are bad, then yes, I'll give you that.
So, Econoboy, did you happen to catch what I said? I don't know if you said it with you.
No, I wanted to take a little bit of break. My wife made some soup, and I wanted to taste it.
Hey, there you gotta get the soup. So here's the question. Here's the question I'm posing.
Vegetable beef, classic.
Hey, there you go. That's good stuff. Especially this cold weather, crock-pot meal is the way to go. I'll be honest. Big fan. I will say, yeah, it's cold for Texas. All right, we don't get cold often. I will say this though. So I was saying earlier, I proposed on other panels that the ERS would basically be an enforcement agency to enact diplomatic will. The goal might not necessarily be economic. Like say, for example, Mexico, he threatened them with the tariff. The ERS would be, in theory, would be the ones that were going to go enforce this. Now we got remain in Mexico, so we made other goals. Do you not see the ERS as like a potential tool to be used diplomatically? Or are you so worried that the economic negatives are going to be really just soul crushing to where it's not even a viable tool? Like,
I mean, it really just depends. I think it really just depends on the entity. I mean, I think that when you're talking about China specifically, I mean, I think there's probably an upper limit on like how much you would even functionally be able to tariff China, unless you really just had the view that like we just shouldn't trade with China and that shouldn't be a thing. I mean, that would be a very difficult thing, I think, for the U.S. economy to kind of absorb overnight. It would just be really hard. Now, insofar as the first thing that you said, like, okay, well. And there's been like some various statements to this effect as well. Like, okay, well, like, what about like the specialized expertise, like concentrating all of that in one place? I mean, I mean, the Federal Reserve, for instance, they have all these different regional banks, and these regional banks have different expertises. For instance, the Reserve Bank in Dallas, in our neck of the woods, they specialize in U.S.-Mexican economic relations, right? It's like, okay, well, if we really wanted to understand like what the impact of tariffs on Mexico would be, it just seems like we've already got a group of people who are like perfectly fitted to answer that question, right? I just don't know, on the question of the ERS, I just don't know the utility basically of having an external revenue service such that Trump has proposed. Now, to be fair, again, I mean, all that Trump has said in his executive order is like that the ERS should be looked into. Like it was like, hey, these various departments will look into establishing an external revenue service. So we don't ultimately know what form this will take. But just like on its face, like a government agency in charge of basically specifically collecting revenues and tariff policy, I just feel like we've got a lot of other people that are already positioned to handle this. So,
and I'll say, in that regard, I'm gonna just liken it to doing stuff at work, right? If I need a project done, so say I need to reset an entire store, I could have the staff in that store do it. The people that are there, open to close, they're boots on the ground, they're the salespeople, they're capable, they know how to do it, they could do it, but they have a lot of other things also to do, right? They also need to service customers and whatnot. Or I can call people from my marketing department and my merch department and bring them into the store and say, hey, you guys specialize in this, reset this store. And I think that's kind of the point, is could we have the people do it? Yes, it might be fine. It might just be absolutely fine, even though we're planning on doing more tariffs and increasing all of that, therefore maybe increasing that workload. It's almost always better to compartmentalize it and make it really small and really efficient, and that's what I believe would happen if they did create the ERS, because he's all talking about efficiency and downsizing pretty much every department and getting rid of some of them entirely. But a much smaller, more efficient, hardworking government and hardworking departments in each individual area, I think would be a better thing. Less mishaps, less money going missing, less accidentally losing billions of dollars or accidentally sending billions of dollars to, terrorist organizations. So I think it's definitely better to compartmentalize and get those specialists, like you said, if they're specialists here, pull them and put them all together in one very small, very efficient area. They can get these policies together. They can figure out what's the best tariff, what's going to bankrupt it and make it not worth it. Where's that limit? If we go over this amount, we're not going to be able to sustain this. It's going to, it's not going to have the effect we want, yada, 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 for each individual industry. And then also collecting on them and making sure that people do pay their fair share. Because as we know, countries everywhere talk about, I'm going to pay this, I'm going to pay that, and then they just don't pay it. So that's another part of like the whole UN thing, the United Nations. It was like all these countries saying, yeah, I'm supposed to pay this much, and they're just not paying it, and no one's enforcing it.
Let me
again,
go to you, Don Fon. I'm not about to. I just want to ask you a quick question, then you can answer this with this. All right, so in regards to this, like, I know you're pretty avid for the free trade globally in general. Do you? I guess in your response to like whatever you're about to respond to, and to me, can you tell me like why you don't think that, like, do you believe countries can be adversarial, and if they're using these like their own bad tactics against us, what are we supposed to do? Are we supposed to just let them do this and try to like hope the free trade wins out? Or are we supposed to fight back? Like, because trade wars do happen. Like, I mean, you can argue whether they're good or bad, or et cetera, et cetera. And I think they do happen. Do you like, what do you think our weapon should be if not this? And then go ahead and respond whatever you want to go to as well.
Yeah, so I mean, well, just firstly, again, like the big issue is not with like taking people in other departments and moving them to a new building with ERS on it. Like, my big issue is that we're creating an agency just to implement like the worst form of like taxation. When it comes to like trade wars, I mean, my case is essentially a unilateral case. Like, there's a quote from some economist, putting tariffs up on countries that tariff you is equivalent to like dumping rocks in your harbors because other countries have rocky ports. The majority of the harm done with tariffs is on the country's own citizens. They decrease productivity, they decrease jobs, they increase prices, they do all these bad things. It doesn't seem like they even have a great history when it comes to like negotiating with other countries. Like, to my knowledge, no country reduced tariffs after Trump put his tariffs up. When we had a lot of countries like China and Turkey put their own retaliatory tariffs up that hurt U.S. farmers. There might be some case to be made for some type of currency intervention, because if China does like manipulate their currency, maybe we should do some type of sterilized intervention to make make China's currency the value what it should be relative to the dollar. But the case for free trade is unilateral. I don't think it's a net benefit to impose tariffs on us just because other countries are imposing tariffs on us. And by the way, these people, the ERS, all these professionals at the ERS could write a study. They would reject it because they reject the studies we already have. As if it doesn't align with their conclusions, they would reject it.
Let me ask you this, and then I'm gonna turn it over to somebody else. But let me ask you this follow up here, though. I see this a lot, right, from people in my circle, right? And the expression "there's good liars, bad liars, and statistics" comes up a lot, right? And I think there's a universal. I don't know about universal, maybe that's not the right word, but there's a very large movement that wants to reject like the current academia, and because it seems like academia has given in to I don't know, let's just, for lack of a better way to put this, leftist ideology. Do you like, how do you sell that to somebody, say, hey, these studies indicate this, when it seems much more like, to like a lot of these people, much more like Pentuple's been proposing, that it's not that complicated. It's much more simple, and y'all aren't debunking this. How do you sell that to somebody?
Well, I mean, the issue is, like, Pentuple literally doesn't understand enough about economics to understand any of these studies, and the fact that economists address the very concerns that he's talking about.
So how do you respond to that question?
Pentuple, you said you didn't want to engage with me. You wanted to engage with Econoboy, and Econoboy did reply to you.
You're saying things that are wrong because you're using absolute words, too. I mean, you completely said something untrue. You literally just said that there is zero evidence that threatening tariffs on another country will keep that country from imposing tariffs on us. And that's wrong. That's entirely wrong. It happened with France.
I don't know if I said there was zero evidence. I said they have a bad history.
You said it's happened 0 times. You were like, it's happened 0 times. And I was like, what? Huh?
I said, to my knowledge, you might know something I don't know. I said, to my knowledge, no country that Trump raised tariffs on reduced their tariffs afterwards.
And
I could be wrong in that if you want to link me.
Walk through it slowly. You tariff the foreign good, right? Which means they either have to eat the cost to maintain the same market price, or they have to pass that on to the customer, which increases the market price. If the price goes up, the demand goes down, right? Is that a basic economic principle?
Yeah, again, I don't dispute that part, and economists don't dispute that part.
Okay. So that demand going down for the foreign product that doesn't apply to the American product increases the relative market position of the American product to the foreign product, right?
Yeah, we don't dispute that part. We're disputing the parts where we talk about like
you have been saying that there's no way that tariffs can help American manufacturing. But I'm trying to break it down very, very simply and asking, where does that break down?
Let me reply. The reason tariffs often fail to help aggregate manufacturing, even if they help certain parts of manufacturing, there's a number of different reasons. One, as I mentioned earlier, exchange rates appreciate. You make the dollar more expensive in world markets. That hurts exporters' ability to export. By the way, a lot of manufacturers export their stuff. Two, wait, I have to finish this because Pentuple will cry about it if I don't, okay? Two,
I'm not going to cry.
you have the potential-
I don't care what you say. I
Okay,
can't wait to
great.
hear a
But for
convoy
the audience,
respond
you
to
have
what
the
I'm saying. I would like
potential
to get an
tariff
answer.
on goods. We saw this with Trump's
You
own
increase the
tariffs.
relative market position of the American product.
Notice how he
Doesn't that
literally won't
obviously
engage. He
follow
literally
to
won't listen or
manufacturing?
engage with me.
There's no point in engaging with you. I've said it 4 times. I don't want to go to these little fucking stupid rabbit holes.
You are asking me how tariffs can hurt
You're
manufacturing. You won't let me
insufferable.
answer. What do you mean,
I live
Pentuple?
in your head.
All right, stop. Sorry about that. We had to calm down. Goose All right, I'm gonna go to Abby. Then I want to go to Econoboy here because, what do you think here? What are your thoughts here on what they said? I heard you trying to get interrupt, and then I know Econoboy's got a lot of thoughts. So go ahead.
Well, he said not to my knowledge, so I'll go ahead and inform him that it did happen. It happened in France. France was basically saying, we're going to put a tariff on digital services. Amazon, Google, all of these things. It would really wreck American companies. France was threatening to do that in the trade war that we kind of had with France. Trump came in and was like, hey, Macron, what's up? If you do that, that's fine. But I'm going to put a hard tax on wine and champagne coming from France. A hard tariff. I'm going to throw a tariff on top of it. And he's like, hey, don't do that. And then all of a sudden it was like, okay, never mind, truce. We're not going to either impose those tariffs. So that's another way in which tariffs are absolutely necessary. If you have other countries that are imposing tariffs on large industry coming out of your country and you're refusing to put tariffs back on that other country, it's literally just taking money from the American taxpayer and then giving it to other countries because they know that if something happened, we would back them up, national security, whatever it is, and then we're not reciprocating that.
Hold on,
Just to clarify.
We're going to go to Econoboy. Hold on. Nope. You have to wait. Sorry. We're going to Econoboy. Go ahead. And then
unfortunately, I feel like we're repeating ourselves. I don't think that Nanfan and I would disagree that tariffs are useful for geostrategic reasons, right? I mean, for instance, I wouldn't mind if we had like 100% tariff on, I don't know, chocolate.
So I guess my question is, what do we do in that situation when a country is adversarial? Like, what do you propose be done in that situation? Like, if they use trade tactics.
Well, I mean, I guess it's a nuanced issue. Like, for instance, when it comes to China, right? Like, China, they tariff, obviously, they have a bunch of tariffs on American goods because they have, they specifically don't want American goods to, like, enter their country for various reasons. They feel like they need to protect their industries. But, think about what that actually does to the Chinese consumer, right? The Chinese consumer is not able to purchase what would otherwise be pretty high quality American goods for probably a fairly competitive price, right? And that's obviously not great for the Chinese consumer. It's not good for the welfare of the average Chinese person because the average Chinese person is now stuck with probably otherwise lower quality goods than they could get if they had a more, open access to things. I mean, think about it like this, right? I mean, if I told you, hey, instead of having 5 companies to choose from when you buy your deodorant, let's say, you've only got 2 companies to choose from. Well, intuitively, you'd probably say, well, the average quality of my deodorant's probably going to go down, and I'm probably going to pay a higher price for it because there's less competition, which is bad for the average person.
Communist country and move to a capitalist country.
Well, but I didn't mention communism or capitalism.
Another win for capitalism.
Let's
go.
Right?
But hold on there 1 second, Econoboy. I think that there's something you're kind of leaving out there, though, which is, like, for example, what do you do in this situation? I know that China has ownership laws for foreign companies where if you own a company and you're whatever, you have that lease for whatever, 10 years time, 20 years time. I don't know the exact specifics, but I know they vary. But after that amount of time, you become like 90% Chinese owned or the controlling share owned or et cetera, and that seems like they're sitting here using their governmental powers to take advantage of a free trade, right? So when you're a country like the U.S., what do you propose we do in that situation? Like this TikTok came up. Like, do we manifest destiny TikTok and like take it from them like by force? Do we, try to sell it? Do we ban it? Like this all kind of falls under stuff with the ERS. It's like, how do you deal with something like where they're openly flaunting their political power for economic gain?
Well, I mean, I don't want to get on a tangent on TikTok. Obviously,
I'm just using this as an example. I apologize.
Yeah. I mean, in general, right? If we find that, if we have reason to believe that China is doing things that sort of manipulate the trade balances of countries and like engage in sort of less than free market policies with regards to their trade planning, then you have reason at that point to use the threat of tariffs to try and get concessions and try to sort of mutually sort of de-tariff your goods or whatever that is. But again, like what we have to keep going back to is that is just like so not what Trump is promising, right? Trump is saying he wants universal basic tariffs. He even, floated the idea of having a UBI funded by tariffs, which is kind of a funny thing. But anyway, he's not really talking about strategic tariffs. And we saw this in his first term, unprecedented expansion.
Would you like that?
Well, not if it's funded by tariffs, certainly not. But
wait, what? I was gonna say if we're gonna do UBI, that's the only way we would ever agree to UBI.
Well,
I could maybe get on board with UBI if it was funded by tariffs.
Hold on.
Well,
We'll come back to that.
just to be
let
clear,
him finish. Let him finish.
Anytime anyone asks
You're drowning in taxes, my friend. Save us.
I shouldn't interrupt you. Go ahead. Finish that. We're going to come back to the UBI thing. By tariffs.
Yeah. I mean, just to be clear, insofar as we support a UBI, tariffs raise a trivially low amount of revenue, which, again, is very distortionary and ends up paying people back less than what they probably end up paying in higher cost of goods and services. We can even look at the state of Alaska, right? The state of Alaska does the same thing that the state of Norway does, right? They socialize resource rents. They put it into a giant pool of stock and equities and fixed income for their citizens. And what do they do every year? They give thousands of dollars of capital income, a UBI, to their citizens. And it's not distortionary, and it really helps the welfare of their citizens. Again, that's a red state. That's a Republican state. I wouldn't exactly call Alaska socialist or communist. But they do that, and it helps their citizens, and it does so without, these greatly distortionary economic effects. I'm just saying, hey, why not Alaska for America? We can do that. That's a lot smarter policy.
Hold on. You did the thing again. You did the thing again. You did the thing. The second time
I'm so
you've done
sorry.
this.
What did I do?
I'm going to tell you what you did. Don't worry. Public Enemy's here. I have to tell you what he sees. And it's you compare to a really small, population-wise area where they have an example of, an extreme large amount of, resource. Like, it's Alaska. It's oil.
Gibbs, America has a lot of
everywhere
resources.
is some level of resource rents.
Hold on. I'm gonna give you a win, I think, to help you out here, even though you don't need it. Alaska, bad example, because I think they're kind of like the Denmark. They're small. You know where you could have gone is Texas, where we do it with education with the oil. We did the same thing, and A&M benefits, Texas benefits. Thank you for the raid, by the way. Chai, and the sub. Appreciate it.
Texas also
take
does
Texas
it with
as
no
an
state income tax.
Take Texas as
That's
an
a good
example,
point, though.
right? Like
Maryland does it
Texas-
with the lottery.
And then we go to that. Go ahead. We'll let you go. You kind of
They'll do lottery.
I'm just saying, use that as an example, right? Like Texas, as a means to fund a huge pool of resources to fund our education system, they don't say, oh, we need to tax goods that are coming from Oregon and New Mexico and Florida, because that would just be that would be dumb, right? That would be terrible policy, right? Instead, they do anything else, which is typically, speaking, a lot more evidence-based, has a lot more reason to believe that it'll work, has a lot more empirical backing. There's just a lot of reasons to think that tariffs aggregately are not very effective. And on the point of their strategic nature, again, Trump is just not promising strategic tariffs. The last thing I was going to say before Gibbs jumped in was that in Trump's first term, he had an unprecedentedly high level of tariffs on China, and the only sort of temperature thawing that happened was on the tariffs that Trump and China went back and forth on. There was actually no net new trade concessions from either country as a result of the tariffs, and so I just don't think we can. We might be able to bully France, we might be able to bully Canada, our allies, right? But we can't bully a billion-person company or a billion-person country like China into doing the same thing. And I'm not even sure that it's valuable to do so. Those are just important things to keep in mind.
So, and I think bullying is a strong. I think bullying is a strong word in that regard. I mean, I get the impact you're making, but at the same time, those countries have tariffs on us, and they're our allies. So I don't see why we should have no money from them when the whole thing, and we all know this, is they're allies with us because we have a reputation as having a big, bad, ugly military, and if you mess with us, we're gonna kick you in your face, right? So we provide them a certain level of security with them knowing
Hold
that
on
if
one
anything
second, Abby. Let me
happens,
pause
we'll
you. I
jump in.
apologize. I'm going to turn it right back over to you. I hate to interrupt you. I feel bad. But thank you so much for the raid, Wick. Oh, actually, let me just do a little housekeeping. Thanks for the sub, Chai. Thanks for the raid. Sorry about your dad. That's terrible. No, I'm not going to buy your hair extensions. It's my birthday week. You can send me some money and any other degenerate things you want to send, a la Destiny style. Just kidding. Don't do that. Secondly, Wick, thank you so much for the raid. Appreciate it. Big shout out to Wick. Check him out. He's badass. Good stuff. You know what I like about these people is Wick specifically. He's a good accountable. They come in and they argue with the righties and like I hate echo chambers. They're fucking boring. Good stuff. So shout out to Conway for joining us. Shout out to Wick for raiding us and everything else, all that, and everybody else. Go ahead, Abby. Continue. So got to do some housekeeping there.
So I would, but I've lost my train of thought at this point.
Well,
Caught me off guard.
Wait.
That happens. I apologize. You gotta be current with this on the streaming. Excited when these people rage you and all that good jazz. But yeah, I mean, I'll move this conversation down a little bit. Actually, not fun. Did you have something you wanted? I felt like you had something you wanted to go before I move it.
I don't remember at this point now. I'm good.
All right, cool, fantastic. Here's the thing, right? So, Abby, right? I would consider you an economic expert, but like at a micro level, right? And same thing here. You were arguing about a lot of the macro, right? What is your argument against what kind of non-fun economists are saying, where it's kind of like it's very complicated, it's very nuanced. Pentuples would argue that it seems very much like, hey, it's so simple. Let's just do X, Y, Z. Do you agree with this, or no? Because you mentioned the sales tax thing here in Texas, and I know that's kind of maybe your inspiration for the IRS. You want to care about it, elaborating on that?
Well, no, I mean, I agree in the fact that the ERS is needed so that we can have a bunch of people come in and say, okay, which tariffs are going to be good, the same way Pentumple was saying, right? You're going to need people that know things, that are experts on this. I mean, Biden wasn't an expert on tariffs either, right? It's not like we place experts, economist experts as president every single time. It's not how it works. They surround themselves with people, hopefully, that have the best intentions. Not always. Every president has had bad people in his cabinet or in his administration. The hope is that if it comes to light that those people are bad, they get fired, which did not happen in our last administration. So there's that just side point. But I think the hope is that we're going to create very small, efficient government entities that can handle specific things. They are experts in those things. They're the best at those things. They enjoy what they do, and we can trust them as far as you can trust somebody, right? To be able to put in place things that make sense. And I think that's how Trump ran his last administration, which is why there were also some things that came out of it that weren't great. He still had a lot of people, some warmongers in place that were trying to get money for BlackRock and everybody else involved. So I think it's one of those things where we're going to have to trust that he's going to put the right people in place and that he's going to be more selective about who he puts in certain positions this go around, based on the fact that he himself has said when he came in last time, he was like, I was hit like a ton of bricks. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. But now he's had some time to kind of figure that stuff out, and I trust him on that. I think that he's going to do a great job on it.
I mean,
so if he says we need the ERS, I'm all for it.
You guys don't trust the experts we have currently. Like tariffs are probably the place where there's the most economic consensus that there is, and we know what people.
Sorry, that was from Kai Bonnie. That wasn't from me. Wow. She told me to say that.
We know what people Trump are putting in office, like the Treasury Secretary, Steve Bassett is his name or something. He was up there arguing that tariffs are actually free because exchange rate appreciation fully cancels out the effect of tariffs. And one of his advisors literally in 2016 just made a basic accounting error because he said the imports subtract from GDP. These guys, Stephen Myron doesn't even know if he wants to strengthen the dollar or weaken the dollar. In part 3 of his unhinged essay, he says, we gotta. Tariffs are actually free because the dollar strengthens. And then in part 4, he says, actually, we have to weaken the dollar a ton because we need to make, that helps U.S. manufacturing. These people are not the best experts. The majority of economists disagree with them. You are just selectively picking these 3 random experts that you like for some reason.
I didn't pick 3 specific people. I was talking on a theory level, and you like to drill down into really specific details and then nail those details on people, which
Yes.
is really odd because it's not.
odd.
I'm not talking
It showcases
about
that you don't know what you're talking about.
No, I'm not talking
Non
about
Vaughn, the holy
3
expert is here.
people at
Everyone
all.
shush.
Hold on, hold
I'm
on.
not an
talking
expert.
on
I
a
just
much
know high
broader
school level
level.
economics.
We're talking on a much broader
No,
level, and you want to
you
talk
don't know
about
anything.
Okay,
something
so-
that one person that might be involved with it said how long
You
ago?
said you trust Trump's experts. I gave you examples of like 3 of Trump's experts making egregious errors.
Well, hold on.
Those
so
are 3
actually,
people
you
out
didn't-
of how many?
Th-
Because how many people? How
Those
many
are-
people are going to be? How many people are appointed to the ERS? Do you know? Because I didn't think
let me
they
just
they
reframe
nailed
this.
that down yet.
Let me just reframe this because I think that something Pentemple and Abby are hitting on. I want to get a combo response to this too. Is like y'all? I think non-fly. You're taking a like traditional like, hey, this is what the experts are saying, right? This is the facts, right? This is these. It's undeniable. These are the stats, etc., etc. Right? And when we look at this last election, right? I feel like there's somewhat of a group of people that feel like academia as a whole has lied to them, right? Whether it's on the culture war, whether it's on like, hey, the polling. Well, I guess that's not academia, but like they feel lied to, right? How do you sell them that, hey, this set of facts are the facts? Why? Like because I don't think you're doing. I think because what you're doing right now is you're just arguing, hey, this is what we got, right? This is what it is. Whenever people are saying, "Hey, it's much more simple than that," I don't like. How do you argue this? It's like
I try to nail them down on specific things and like walk them through like I've had whole conversations with people where I spend like 30 minutes like walking them through tariffs lead to exchange rate appreciation, and then we spend 30 more minutes like tariffs lead to inefficient resource allocation, like, and I try to nail them down on all these specific things so eventually like you can get like the macro picture of things. It's hard to have this entire like conversation of whether all economists are like secretly like hidden leftists. Like,
go ahead, economist.
I think that the problem is that people haven't replaced skepticism. Okay, how do I put this? When I went to school, I was told that you do have to be skeptical of these things, but the important part of that was not that we just ended the conversation there. It was you have to be skeptical. And here's how to do your own research. Here's how to conduct your own studies. Here's, I don't know how many classes. I probably took 6 courses on statistics and research design. And, that was at the college level. But even at the high school level, right? I mean, you learn how to write research papers and, you learn how to get good sources and these kind of things. And I mean, that's like a fairly basic part of education. But what it feels like to me is that a lot of people have said, I'm skeptical of the experts, that's in period, right? But they don't actually end up doing a lot of their own sophisticated research, right? There's not really a lot of follow-up with that. And instead of being skeptical of the experts, they've traded a skepticism for the experts for a lack of skepticisms for basically like alternative media figures and alternative facts, right? Like how many people who they listen to people like RFK Jr., Joe Rogan, Ben Shapiro. How many people listen to these commentators and basically just parrot what they say without actually looking into the facts for themselves, right? There's obviously a percentage of people that do that, and that's a big problem because that's not skepticism. That's the opposite of skepticism.
Well, you're kind of presuming that everyone sorts out, like every time someone receives a new piece of information that they're immediately deciding whether that's true or false, like whether for whatever reason. But I think a lot of people want to just get information and just have that available to reference if they ever want to. It's not necessarily they have to adopt it or reject it. Well, I'm just saying it's like
that's the opposite of skepticism. That's just I just want information that I agree with. I just want like the most convenient facts.
They want from that alternative media. I'm saying you're saying they're going and giving more credibility to the alternative media. I think that they're just getting more from the alternative media to deal with, as opposed to just this like filtered down, curated version of everything. And like the experts, like the reason people don't trust the experts because they've been wrong. It's not just because we're paranoid schizo.
What you just said. Okay, we're getting a filtered down version of the facts.
Things to different people. When you say that,
it shouldn't though.
Well, that's the problem. That's why people don't trust
anybody. That's not a problem.
Because you've got this set of experts that say this, and you've got this set of experts that say this, and it's probably somewhere kind of in the middle.
Credibility matters. So when you go the entire election cycle saying that Kamala's miles ahead, and then she loses the popular vote, the credibility's gone. And
Listen,
rightfully
couple,
so.
just shut the fuck up for a second. Okay, we
man.
just have to consider what Abby just said. Some things are just true, right? So like we hear this a lot. Oh no, it must be in the middle. People disagree. We heard this on climate change for a long time. Oh, we've got the news. Piers Morgan show. We've got the guy that doesn't believe in climate change, and the guy, the scientist who does believe in climate change. Oh, the truth must be somewhere in the middle. It's not. Climate change is just a thing, and it's man-made, and that's just a fact of the fucking matter, right? And if you disagree with it, you ain't got the facts, right? Like some things work that way.
If we take the vid, for instance, there were different experts on different sides of COVID, and they shut down one side entirely, and that's what started people not believing experts. That's what started the entire thing.
That's not what started that. That's not what started that. What started that was sensationalist news media. No. What started that was sensationalism.
You guys
about COVID was wrong.
Okay, so go ahead, non-fun. What were you saying?
It's so hilarious. You guys get so fucking angry when I try to have these conversations with you and I try to like nail you down on a specific thing, like whether or not there's a trade-off between the amount of revenue a tariff raises and how much we bring manufacturing back.
Okay,
but then I can't cite experts either because all the experts are rigged. I don't have to cite experts. I can walk you through. I can hold your hand through it, and we can read Greg Mankiw together. Okay, we can read an economics textbook together. Okay, I'll do it with you. But you don't do that. But you also reject the experts. It's invincible ignorance.
So just to all right, I'm gonna you know what? I'll just let my bias fly a little bit. I think that'll be fun for a second. It's just to push back on you, non-fun, right? Like I feel like I'm pretty economically savvy, right? Like, and at least on like the micro level, right? Like I've done fairly well for myself. I have a massive fucking ranch now. Like I'm buying more land. My businesses are doing good. I got like 200 employees. Like I'm doing pretty good. I'm not no Bill Gates. I'm doing okay, right? I see the moves you're describing, and I like thinking this. I've read a lot of the economics books. I took all this in college, all that good jazz. My specialties obviously was like politics, but when I look at these things, I go, hey, I think it is sometimes that simple, and sometimes we're overcomplicating things, and like two things can be true. Yeah, one might hurt us economically, but we could gain, and two, like it's a diplomatic win, right? And whenever I say, okay, these are the end goals, what does that look like? I mean, I can see different ways of achieving this, and your argument is basically, oh, it's not that simple because these 15 other factors, and then we look at this last election, and it seems like the experts, quote unquote, lied to us repeatedly on different issues. So it's like, why would the right trust these experts? Like, I get the argument these are the experts we should trust, but it seems like there's some sort of bias like that's gone into this and that the right's not buying. So like I don't know how you can sell that to us. I mean I
think it kind of like did a good job explaining sort of like the selective skepticism. I also, like I said in my opening, like we can talk about like whether it's a good diplomatic thing. I just usually want the concession that like free trade is a good thing, and then we'll talk about how to get there, whether it's most effective to like have these retaliatory tariffs as a negotiation tool.
I mean, I think unfortunately,
you
I think like there's just
student trying to reach a word count on the last day, throwing in like 15 sources and thinking he deserves an A.
Notice how he won't engage with anything I say. People ask me a direct question.
God damn it! All right, stop. Hold on. I do want to have this conversation. Well, I'm gonna let you ask your question.
Legitimate question.
Yeah. 1 second here. Let Econoboy respond real quick, and then you ask that question because it might go off on a tangent. I want to know you want to respond. What you say?
Yeah, I mean, I think unfortunately the skepticism in experts is more a result of our political polarization and the demonization of each side of the political aisle. I mean, obviously, it's not that the left or the right has a monopoly on that. I mean, of course, I would argue that I think the right's been a little bit worse on that issue. Of course, that's a whole other debate. Let's just forget about it and say it's a both sides issue. But the point is, though, is that I think that that's really the symptom of this. I think that people in general have been victims of a social media and news media ecosystem, which frankly itself just doesn't really care about facts or presenting information in a dry, accurate manner, and rather cares more about presenting information that obtains clicks, that obtains watch time. And unfortunately, that's why we see this radical disconnect between basically what actual reality is and what people tend to actually believe. Not that that's always disconnected, but obviously there's a huge problem with, I mean, like, for instance, like vaccine skepticism has just like exploded in popularity. And I'm sorry, but this is just one of those things. Look, vaccines just work. They just do, period. There's no argument to be had in that regard. And if you're not getting your kids vaccinated, you're leading to probabilistically worse health outcomes for your kids. And that's not good, but that's not as a result of people being like individually malicious or not caring about their kids. That's as a result of our sensationalist media environment and our polarized political landscape. So to answer your question, Gibbs, like, how do we stop that? Like, I wrote an article about how we should completely reorganize news media, but I mean, outside of doing that, I don't know. It's kind of hard, right? I don't know.
Feel free. By the way, feel free to link me the article. I'd love to read it. I like to read all the good stuff. Abby, what was your question?
Well, and I would say I don't disagree with that, to be entirely transparent. I don't. And I think the fact that people's trust was so eroded due to them jumping out of the gate so quickly with facts that they weren't 100% certain on, and allowing pharmaceutical companies to kind of take charge on that, I think was a bad decision. Because we do now have people that think all vaccines are crap, right? And like, you shouldn't vaccinate your kids against polio or smallpox or measles, which is insane. So, and it's not the right swing, but I think that specific issue is somewhere in the middle. It's now straight facts that we were lied to about a lot of things with COVID. Some things no, but a lot of things yes. And I think it was due to money. So that's on that point. But my original question was, when it comes to experts on both sides, right? You're talking about you want specifically free trade, that's it, no tariffs, period, none whatsoever. But there are also, that's kind of how you've been coming at it. You're using a lot of absolute words, so that's kind of where I'm taking it. And there's a lot of economists that disagree with that. Even people that are in favor of free trade, they say, hey, free trade, but tariffs in certain places, they can be useful. So I don't see how you can be like super free trade, that's it, no other options, and think tariffs are the devil, and then say the experts say you're right when there's experts that say you're wrong.
When I'm citing experts, first of all, I don't just like cite them on like a broad like macro thing. I'm citing like a paper they wrote on like one specific thing, but also like, I would say, if my words were misleading or whatever, I apologize. But like, I would say like there are plenty of goods that I would be fine with tariffing. Like from China, we should probably tariff drones. We should probably tariff batteries because they're big national security issues. Certainly economists disagree on like what specific goods we should tariff and like how much exchange rate appreciation is caused by tariffs and like all these like micro issues. But very few economists, basically no respected economist, is arguing that 20% universal tariffs or 25% tariffs on all products from Canada and Mexico are a good thing. There is almost unanimous consensus around that.
That was my point whenever I was saying you're specifically picking out these three people and then tying them to an argument over here, right? That was my whole
those were three people
point.
Taking the highest roles in Trump's administration, like the Treasury Secretary and like the Chief Economic Advisor are two of the people I cited.
But not Peter Navarro. So, but you weren't talking about Peter Navarro.
I believe he was Trump's previous advisor.
Director of the White House National Trade Council, and he's all for tariffs and implemented them well. Might I add?
Well, this is what again. Peter Navarro is the guy earlier I said made an accounting error when he said import subtract from GDP. I'm saying you are picking these three experts that you think are doing better when I have a documented example of this guy you just cited making a basic like Econ 101 error. He doesn't understand how we calculate GDP even.
Well, hold on. Like, I get what you're saying. It's a big error, right? It's bad, right? But we've all seen The Wolf of Wall Street. What's his little bullshit line? He's like, I wish they remember me for all my losses because I have so few. Like, yeah, once you get to the top, if you have one big mistake, everybody's going to remember. I mean, you never want to be Drew Bledsoe and then go down and have Tom Brady step up. That's a bad time. But even Tom Brady got sacked. Like, I mean, so like, I'm sitting here when I'm hearing what you're saying, and I don't know that I necessarily throw out the baby with the bathwater just because one economist makes a thing. I could look at plenty of economists. Like, what was the guy? I'll give you one of them. Once again, this is a micro level because I mean, a lot of what y'all talking about.
We could cite lots of different experts in different areas.
What was the guy, Kramer? Do y'all remember Kramer?
The guy with the keys with the election said there was absolutely no way Donald Trump was going to win, and he did. And he was always right. He was
This is
right about everything.
absurd.
His keys were infallible.
Well,
So it happens. People make mistakes.
Well, sure, but I mean, do y'all remember what was the guy that was it Kramer? He did the Mad Money and he had all the buzzers and the stocks and and like that guy's gone. But like for what, close to a decade, he was like the online that TV economist. Like I just don't understand how y'all can say, oh, they're infallible, but or not infallible, like at the same time. Like it seems like a double standard. Go ahead.
I'm not even claiming.
It's not that they're infallible, right? Again, it's what I said previously. Like it's about trusting the process and evaluating the process by which we determine the truth and information. So I'm a big believer in the scientific process. So scientists who engage in the scientific process and try to evaluate things using that process and, come to conclusions using that process. That doesn't mean that process is perfect. It doesn't mean that it's not susceptible to human error. It doesn't mean that it's not susceptible to bad faith, right? And people that are malicious in their intent. But it does mean that the process itself should be trusted, right? And I think that when we have multiple experts' opinion, when we have many different experts who have engaged in that process and come to similar conclusions, I just think that gives you a really large reason to believe that those conclusions are true. That's it, right? And I think that when people put their trust in alternative media figures like Joe Rogan, RFK Jr., I just use those as a couple examples, those people are fundamentally just not engaged in the scientific process. They are not engaged in that process. And so when people trust people like Joe Rogan and RFK Jr. for information, other than, outside of people like, medical experts and scientists and things like that, I would argue that they're making a process error. Not that it's wrong to trust people who don't have a PhD in whatever subject, but they're trusting people who are fundamentally engaged in a process which we do not have strong reason to believe is effective at delivering true, basically true statements. And there's a lot of reason to believe, in fact, the opposite is true, that these people are more likely to be incorrect than people who engage in that type of process. It just happens to be the case, last thing I'll say, that people who engage in that process for a long enough period of time, they typically get PhDs, they typically get medical degrees, they typically become heads of government agencies. And I don't think that's because it's some deep state conspiracy. I think it's just because that process has proven to be very effective, and people in governments and people in large corporations, they tend to want, people who are very effective. And I think that's why we see this sort of correlation between education and elite and, the process that people use.
But I think that's what we were saying with the ERS to begin with, to take it kind of back there, is if they're going to use the ERS not just to collect on all of these tariffs, but also to determine with experts, okay, what's going to be the right tariffs to put in place? What exactly is the exact amount? Is it 12.3? Is it 8.2? Whatever they decide on, and then implement that. That's what we're trusting to happen, right? Is that we're going to put the right people in place. We're going to form a government agency that's specifically around this. They don't have to also worry about border protection while we're trying to deport millions of people and secure the border, and they got a national emergency there. Separate it off from U.S. Customs and Border Protection and make it a very efficient way to gather on those tariffs so that there aren't misses, so that we don't make mistakes this time around.
So,
I've already mentioned why I think the wrong people are already in place, and who do we think the economist Trump is going to be? Are they going to be the respected economists that do the research that flagrantly contradicts with the research of the research in quotes of the economists that Trump has already chosen? No, it's going to be yes men. Trump's own economists don't even agree on the plan yet. They said that they wanted to do targeted tariffs, and then Trump publicly on Truth Social said, no, that plan's bullshit, made up. I'm actually going to do universal tariffs. And now they're talking about maybe gradually implementing tariffs. It just seems like these people are trying to do whatever they can to appeal to Trump's whims, because Trump doesn't understand that trade deficits aren't subsidies while not destroying the economy.
Well, so, let me present to you a different argument. Now, I don't necessarily agree with this argument, but this is an argument that I know that some of my, people in my circle group, I say quite often, right? They would liken this much to the oil field, right, or working on a refinery, and basically they would say, hey, everything's good in theory until you get an engineer that thinks they need to put a bolt on the inside of a tank with no door on the exit, and I'm like, okay. Yeah, so it sounds like what you're saying is, hey, all these things, theory, X, Y, Z, and then when I look at this at the micro level, I go, that doesn't make sense to me. All these things you're saying, if someone's adversely working against me, I need a way to check them. Right, I need a way to guarantee there's a way to offset my stuff, and it seems like, hey, on the basic ones and twos, this is how this works, right? If X is more expensive here, it's going to be more expensive here, yada yada yada. Much kind of like what Pentuple was getting at. And whenever you're saying these things like, oh, these experts, well, engineers are supposed to be the experts, but maybe sometimes they should be talking to the welders about how to put the stuff together, or like, hey, maybe they should be talking to the plumbers or the guy on the ground, the electrician. And it kind of feels like you're arguing this meta theory, but that theory doesn't match up to the day-to-day like actions of what's happening here. Like, what do you have to say to something like that?
Well, I mean, again, I'm happy to go into like some of these individual things and nail down on these specific points, but you guys don't like when I do that, and like now we're
go ahead.
You don't know how to do it.
To answer your question specifically, right?
Like, sure, hold on. Let him answer. We'll come back to you, non-final. Yeah, go ahead.
If you're talking about like, I don't think anybody here would disagree that horizontal basically management is probably a good practice, right? Like you shouldn't just be in your ivory tower, just like refusing to, so stuck in theory that you're refusing to look at the world around you. But look, as somebody who, I've spent a lot of my time in both environments, right? Both in the practical environment of applying my education, but then also in did a lot of education myself. This is just a concern that's pretty universally understood. Like I in my experience, sure, there's a lot of people who might say, I don't know, like what's the point of working in business, or I don't think I need to do that, or who gives a shit what some welder thinks or whatever. Like there's an amount of elitism in society. Obviously, that's true. But I would also say that, which party and which political movement is more likely to engage in horizontal management, right? Who is more skeptical of hierarchy, right? Who's more willing to say that there's a solidarity between workers, no matter, what function they serve? It's people on the left, right? I mean, this is leftist rhetoric, right? I just don't typically hear a lot of genuine elevation.
That's interesting because also you think about for the left, you would like more big government, and y'all seem to be pretty against establishing another agency and expanding the government's power. How do these two go hand in hand here? Then, like, it's the reverse of what I was concerned about with the Republicans.
Why do you think it's contradictory to say that the government should have more responsibility, but we should also manage things more horizontally and, power sharing? I mean, why is that contradictory?
What does horizontally mean? Are you talking about like state governments at this point?
So, like more for the worker, the lower.
No, like everyone's input. It's not efficient. That's why.
Well, obviously you can't have total horizontal democratic management, but Gibbs is talking about that's not what Gibbs is talking about. Gibbs is saying like, hey, shouldn't you have some amount of input from people on the line and from people who, don't necessarily have Ivy League degrees? And of course I think that's true. But I don't know. I mean, like when I look at Trump's inauguration,
you don't find the argument
really quick.
Go ahead.
If I could just when I look at Trump's inauguration, right, I don't see a lot of plumbers and carpenters and people who work on cars. I see billionaire after billionaire after billionaire who I don't know if there's a less in touch group of people than American billionaires, right? I mean, Democrats are guilty of this too. I'm significantly further to the left than Democrats are, but I just don't think a cabinet filled with billionaires is more likely to basically be touching grass than the opposite, like career professionals who we might say have some expertise and what they're talking about, right? I mean, just look at who Biden appointed versus Trump. Like, I feel like there's a serious technocratic sort of difference between the two groups of people.
The problem isn't how much money the people have. And I think people are so focused on the fact that these are billionaires because we've somehow demonized billionaires, like, oh, they got to pay more money and they should be paying for all this stuff. It's not about the billionaires. It's about what they did to make those billions, right? If you look at a lot of these people, they're not, some of them come from generational wealth, but a lot of them are entrepreneurs. And they come from, you take Vivek Ramaswamy, for instance. Vivek Ramaswamy, highly intelligent, built a wonderful company, has a lot of money, but intelligent, and he's kind of jumped into it. But the thing that they all have in common, for the most part, most of them, they're not politicians. They're not career politicians. That's where the trust is eroded. It's not necessarily with elites. It's not with billionaires. It's with the looking down on the average person, one. And then also, it's the people that have made a career in politics. Those are the people that the American public has lost trust in. They want something new and something fresh, and that's what Trump has brought to the table with the people that he's appointed. And we've yet to see, it will be determined on whether that's a good decision or not. But as you said, we're going to trust them to put the right people in place.
Let's go back to something that came up earlier, and I thought was pretty interesting. That because this kind of reflects that dynamic that I was kind of trying to get at. Where to me it seems like the left is going against something they usually would want, which is look. Why don't we talk about tariffs, funding universal basic income? That seemed like something the Republicans could get behind. Other countries paying for it. Hey, that sounds good. But y'all seem to strike that down right off the jump. What were your thoughts on that? Let's go with non-fun to start here.
I mean, if we want to do a UBI or any government spending, there's more efficient ways to raise revenue and there's less efficient ways to raise revenue. You know, Conway was talking about socializing resource rents. Those are basically, unearned economic payments, right? Like, to say it wouldn't be better to fund a UBI with like resource rents and land rents, or with a DVCFT, which also, by the way, makes foreign countries pay. Like that's just absurd to me. Tariffs are not an efficient way to raise revenue. Like that's the big issue.
Good topple.
I think it sounds kind of sick. I've generally been against universal basic income because it just sounds like redistribution of wealth. But if it's coming from tariffs and I'll open that door. That'd be kind of sick. Maybe that can work, but I don't know.
Listen, redistribution
that seems like a fever dream.
Based quintuple, okay?
No,
Before you
like
go
a
down
fever
that,
dream.
wait, I also just
Even
want to
with
make
tariffs. But I would be in
understand
favor if
in
it didn't work
terms.
out.
We do understand in terms of who pays tariffs. It is paid by U.S. consumers, even if some of the incidence is on foreign nations, right? Like the money goes from U.S. consumers to the treasury or the importer.
You just say that, but that depends on the tariff and on the product.
Well, I understand
and,
the
on
incidence.
The other variables.
No, that doesn't depend on the tariff. The incidence will depend on the tariff, but like in
Certainly
terms of who is actually paying for it, the
it
money
depends if
comes
the
from
company
U.S.
decides to pass it off or not.
No,
And if they decide to pass it off, that's going to
And
worsen
then
their
on top
market
of
position,
that-
which
No,
I
the
argued
business
earlier
pays
is
a
equally
tariff in that case,
advantageous
right?
to us.
if
Let's get out
whoever
of here.
And on top
I'm-
of that, if you're talking about
Go
combining
ahead.
that with reducing the amount of taxes the American people have to pay, I don't see why there would be a problem there.
again,
If you're
so-
talking about just doing the ERS and leaving it at that, and it's like, okay, now we're going to have all of these tariffs and we're not going to do any tax cuts. You're still going to pay exactly the same amount in taxes that you're paying right now. That's not something I think any of us would get behind. It's essentially raising taxes. But
Well,
in the combination of lowering it, that's a different story.
I'll address that a bit in a second. I just want to be ultra clear, Pentuple. I'm saying whoever imports the product, the money leaves their bank account. The U.S. dollars leave their bank account and goes to the treasury. If it's a business that imports the product, they may pass that added cost onto the consumer. They may eat that added
And it
cost as a
worsen
loss
their
of
market
profits.
position.
Well, I don't.
And they
again,
lose their market
I don't-
position.
I don't dispute that, but we
They have
do
to
agree.
raise the cost. They lose demand on their product, like I was
It
saying
is
earlier. These
people-
are basic economic principles, and you
it
love to
is-
throw out all that.
is
Professor
people
Non-Fon.
in the U.S. that pay the tariff, right?
Soft spot.
I just need.
No,
I just
not
need to hear you say
necessarily.
this.
No, not necessarily.
Anyway,
It depends, because if they pass off the price, then
wait,
people are
to
going to
respond
buy
to it,
less of that product, and
let's
the
try-
extra price is priced in when we have our manufacturing take advantage of this in the
Great.
market.
Okay, to respond to what
That's the whole
Azra
point.
said, again, tariffs cannot raise that much revenue. They're going to raise even universal tariffs, assuming no.
What happens in the next 3 years when you're wrong and JD Vance is running in
How much-
2028
Hold on,
and the
hold on.
tariffs
How much
work?
revenue-
You're just like,
Okay,
I don't know why
so
you do this to yourself.
continue responding.
Hold on.
Tariffs
Hold
are
on,
not
let me
going to
take
raise.
control
You're just
here.
gonna kill your own credibility off rip.
Hold on,
How
hold on.
How much revenue do you think could be generated by bringing steel manufacturing back to the United States? And
That's
taking it
actually a
away
good
from
question.
That would probably be a
How
net
much
negative
revenue
revenue
do-
because the number of jobs that use steel versus produce steel is 80 to 1. So for every
What do you think it could do for certain areas that are incredibly
wait.
impoverished, where they do a lot of steel manufacturing?
But you would acknowledge
Historically.
everyone else is losing, right? You have to acknowledge everyone else is losing there, right? They have to pay more for steel, and all these businesses in other areas have to pay more for their inputs. Acknowledge that, please. I need to hear that come out of your mouth.
Hold on,
I don't know enough to be able to get into
Come
those-
on.
we're gonna put a pin
Not
in
on
that.
that.
I want to
specifically.
come back to
That's
that.
why
I
I
wanna
asked
come
a
back-
question. I'm asking a specific question about the revenue. How much revenue do you think could be generated? I mean, when you boil it all together, it's going to give jobs to people in those areas, right? It
Yes,
would,
but at
you
the
would
cost
think.
of other jobs, at the cost of 80 other jobs.
80 other
Hold
jobs.
on, I want to come
80
back to that.
for
real
every
quick.
one job that produces steel, 80 jobs consume steel. So for every one steel job you protect, you're hurting 80 other jobs. Some of those people are going to lose their jobs. We have a study on this. Not that you guys care about the empirical evidence, from Justin Pierce to disentangling the effects of the Trump steel tariffs. You should all read it. That found that tariffs actually reduce net employment because of this very thing. If you tariff a good that businesses use for their products, that just acts as a tax on the business.
Okay.
You're taxing the business,
so-
and they reduce hours in employment.
All right, so I want to go to Econo Boy. Then I'm going to come back to what you just said here, but I want to go to Econo Boy, and then I'm going to say something after that. So go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, on the UBI point specifically, I just think that what's more helpful is not necessarily to talk about, like, oh, the dedicated, I don't even know, like, necessarily the framing it on the UBI point specifically, but it's not necessarily useful to talk about, well, could we use this money for a certain thing, right? I don't think that's as useful as saying, if we want a UBI, how much do we want it to be? Let's just say that we want it to be $100 a month, like to start out. Okay, we want $100 a month UBI for people because we think UBI is a good policy. Well, to Non-Fon's point, it's just like, well, what's the most efficient way to fund that, right? Alaskans get the equivalent of about $100 a month, again, from the things that I've already mentioned, the sovereign wealth fund that Alaska has essentially. I think that's a lot more efficient. To Non-Fon's point again, we can look at revenue estimates for universal tariffs, right? And we know that universal tariffs would have very bad effects aggregately on the economy. So to Abby's point, obviously some people in some regions are going to be positively advantaged, like people that work in steel or people who work in aluminum or just like any domestic industry, let's just say, that's competing with foreign actors, right, are going to be advantaged. But everyone pays the cost of that, and what's stripped off the top of that, not just the cost that people are paying in addition because they have to pay more for the price of goods, is that a lot of profits are just being distributed to wealthy shareholders, right? Domestic shareholders are getting a lot of profits, in association with that. And sure, some of that gets remitted to the state in the form of taxes on like capital gains, income taxes, but it is net negative, right? And even if we take the money from tariffs, it's just a trivial amount of money. Like if we took all the money from tariffs and just distributed it to people in the form of tax revenue, it's just a very small amount of money per month. There's just better ways to do this. There's better, like, if the goal is we want to compete with foreign, manufacturers, there's better ways to do that than tariffs. If the goal is we want to punish foreign manufacturers, well, I mean, strategically, Trump isn't promising that. He's promising universal tariffs. If the goal is we want to socialize basically rents and profits from foreign manufacturers, there's better ways to do that. If the goal is we want to do UBI, there's better ways to fund it. There's holistically better ways to do like all of the goals that MAGA people have for raising tariffs on a bunch of goods are simply better accomplished by other means, right? They're simply better accomplished by other means.
What are those other means?
DBC
I feel like you guys
more
are
tax
explaining
credits and
it
subsidies.
Okay, no, everyone, just give me a second here. Pentuple, you literally must be trolling to say that we haven't mentioned other means. You must be a complete dumbass to say, oh, I've just not been listening this entire time. I refuse to repeat myself. No, it's probably hard to keep up if I had such a fucking small brain like you do. Jesus Christ, Pentuple.
Foreign
Keep the
companies are
fuck
making
up.
massive profits in our country. How are you accessing that money to get some of the revenue out of those profits that they're making?
Okay, so I will repeat myself, I suppose, for the
I
fourth or
apologize
fifth
for
or
shutting
sixth or
out.
seventh time. No, it's clear you have problems understanding. That is clear to me at this point. So
go
for the
through
fourth
it.
or fifth or sixth
It should
time,
be simple.
Pentuple,
If it's so simple,
Pentuple, if I can explain it.
I told him he needed to do
Companies,
this, Kelvin, okay?
they
I
have
told him
this
he needed to
thing
get mad.
called stock. That's the ownership of companies. When you own a company,
Force
you
all of these
own
foreign companies
stock
to
in
our
a
stock
company.
exchange.
Do you want me to explain? I'm
Is
trying to
that
give you the
what you're saying?
simplest,
Can you
most
clarify?
brain dead version I can possibly give you, okay?
Force every foreign company that's doing business in the U.S. onto our stock exchange.
So
Is that what you're? That would be an answer to how
Let him answer.
This is-
Pentuple. Yeah, let him answer here. Let's
Absolute cinema.
So,
Oh my god.
stock
That's what I just
exchanges.
all right, one at a time here. Pentuple, let him go ahead and answer. Yeah, you asked him a question. Let him answer it.
All right. So, stock exchanges are open, liquid markets. Anybody who has money can enter into a stock exchange and buy stock, and there's not really much problem with that. So, if America wanted to take tax revenue, like from resource rents, like I've already described 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times during this debate, and use that money to purchase the stock of foreign companies or domestic
Not every foreign
companies.
companies on the stock market. Very few are.
There's a shitload of foreign companies on stock markets, either in their country or, in fact, this is going to blow your mind. This is going to blow your mind. There's foreign companies that are actually operating on U.S. stock exchanges. Now, that's probably an alien concept.
You're acting like we can solve this by having investments in them.
You can take tax money, and you can purchase stock, and then the government, which is to say the people, because we live in a democratic country, now has ownership of stock.
So every foreign company business in the U.S. is on the stock market here.
Dividend payments and buyback payments, and that money, we can take all that money that private shareholders make, we can take that money, that very same pot, and we can just give it directly to people like they do in Alaska and in Norway and in many thousands and thousands of other examples of publicly owned investment funds. This is not a new concept. It is not unusual. It is, in fact, a fairly trivial thing for governments to do. Now, does that explain is that an alternative that you can understand?
The only hole left is that I don't understand if you think every company is on the U.S. stock market or every foreign company should be. We're going to require that. That's the goal.
As I said, we don't need to force foreign companies to do anything different because stock markets are open. You can take money and you can buy things on either domestic or foreign stock exchanges. You do not need to do any radical reorganization of how we do the stock market. Does that answer your question, Pin? Are you going to say in 10 minutes that we haven't explained alternatives and that, I don't understand, there it is.
So if the foreign company isn't on a stock exchange, how do we deal with this company? How do we deal with that company in your answer?
To answer your question, how does a company get bought if it's not on a stock exchange? Well, that's a great question because not every company is on a stock exchange. You're just saying
we're going to buy we're going to buy every foreign company?
That's exactly what I said.
That's what he said. You got it.
Pentuple, that's what I said. That's what I said. We're going to buy every foreign company. You're saying we're going to buy
shares of them, stock in them? What are you saying?
So, as I said, we're going to buy shares of foreign companies or domestic companies.
And we're going to force them to sell us these shares?
No, in fact, because stock markets are so liquid, there's always shares available for purchase. Literally always. I can go on Robinhood right now and I can buy stocks.
Go into China
and guess what?
And buy up
when I buy a stock on Robinhood, I'm not holding a gun to someone's head and forcing them to buy stock. I'm just buying a share that's open for sale because that's just how things work in this country.
Right, so what about a company that is a foreign company that is not on any stock exchange? Not every company is on a stock exchange. If a foreign company
does not want to sell its shares, the U.S. government can simply buy other shares for sale because there's like billions of different shares.
I can't follow what you're saying. I'm sorry.
I agree. Okay. You can't follow.
Did you guys follow Admiral Gibbs? Did you follow what he was saying? Honestly,
no, that's a great question. Everyone, shut the fuck up. Non-fun understands.
Did anyone else actually follow what he was saying there?
I know very well what he's talking about.
Yeah,
okay, Abby's shaking her head. Yes, Gibbs, did you understand what I just said?
Abby, can you bridge the gap of understanding?
Okay, so all four of us understood exactly what the fuck I'm saying, and you're the dumbass in this situation.
So bring me, help me find the hole.
I understand it. I just don't. I don't
agree. Yeah, I just agree. But I understand.
But you understand it, right?
Yes.
You can conceptualize what I'm saying. You know. Yeah,
and you don't have to. Here's the gap. You don't have to be able to buy every single foreign company to have a market like the largest market share. You could just go to another company and get rid of them.
Right.
I mean, you stomp them in the market. Where the gap is.
Let me try bridging the gap.
But I don't agree with needing to do that because I think universal basic income is actually detrimental to the health of the American people. I think it would be awful for the health of the American people. It would lead to rampant depression and anxiety without purpose.
Why don't we already do this?
People would say, I pay for I've got all my bills paid for. We deal with that now. People get their bills paid for and they go, great, and then they don't want a job, they don't get a job, and then they waste away, they don't take care of themselves, they don't seek medical attention, they sink into depression because they don't have purpose. So universal basic income is a very slippery slope.
Well, let me try to rephrase.
Economy, why don't we already do what you described? Why don't we already do that?
Alaska does.
Aren't doing the things that are good. We're doing things bad currently. I suggest a change in policy.
Alaska could be, and it's different on smaller, and that's the thing. It's talking about scale. When you scale certain things, they don't always work on a very large scale.
That's
in
a good
Alaska,
point.
it may work because Alaska is dark for a lot of that time. You may not be able to work. So they do need to supplement income during those dark periods. I know a lot of times there's certain businesses that shut down in Alaska during the dark season. So that universal basic income can help. But that's not the case across the United States. You'd have areas where large swaths of people would just decide, since their needs are met, they have no reason to have a job, they have no reason to do anything other than sit and watch TV, and then we slowly spiral into idiocracy. I'm not looking forward to the great garbage avalanche of like 2095.
Well,
so I think we have to give people a purpose.
Let me just try to come back a little bit. Yeah, I mean that like to what Temple was asking.
And a reason
to. Are we cutting out?
I mean, I'm not going to pretend to understand something. I may have just missed like a point that I needed, but I just genuinely don't get it.
Well, I don't think he actually. I think, like, to be fair, I understand what Econo was saying. I don't know that he actually answered the concern that I think you're trying to ask. And if this is not what you're asking, you can correct me. But let me try to address this. And this is kind of one of the things I've repeated non-fought a few times is. All right, there are situations where, like, yes, from an economic standpoint, I could see the free trade thing, like all free trade being good. Like, listen, I'm pretty open-minded. I'm pretty laissez-faire. Whatever. I don't really like regulations. I'd argue regulations are, like taxes of their own kind of thing. They're gonna bring costs to consumers. It's a whole different. Like, I'm pretty with y'all. Like, I don't like a lot of government interference. I mean, I brought that up. Now, the issue I'm having, though, and maybe this is the issue that Pentuple's trying to articulate, is when I see somebody like, and I guess China's the real big example, is when their government plays unfairly. Right? They have a company where they say I go and put Gibbs Corp in China. They're going to go, okay, we signed you to a 30-year, 50-year thing. And after 50 years, all your trademark technology now belongs to us, or your trademark product, or whatever, and you have to share a majority shareholder position, or a, wherever, like maybe we have full ownership, or whatever. But it's clearly an unfair deal to where the Chinese government gets over, and then they basically open up your direct competitor next door, and they put you out of business using your IP, or using your method, or using your exact product. And, like, these countries, they don't play fair, and they have advantages in that case. So whenever we're a government, like, whenever y'all say, oh, free trade, let it happen, I do have some of the concern of what I think Pentuple was trying to get at, where it's like, okay, you're saying this, and this makes sense, but you're not acknowledging that these are sometimes malevolent actors. Is that what I mean?
Again, like, I think Nonfun and I would agree that, again, like, free trade is like an ideal, right? It's like, okay, like, ideally we would get there someday, with some level of integration. I mean, again, like, take the United States, for example, right? Like, originally we were 13 colonies, highly skeptical of each other, and we literally created complete free movement of people and capital across borders. That's the United States, right? Again, there's no friction between going from, like, Texas to New Mexico, right? And so we can't obviously do that with China for various reasons, right? Like you said, the government has, we have reason to believe that the government of China is not acting in good faith. The Chinese government obviously probably has reason to believe the same about our government currently. And so there's reasons to think that we can't just immediately just get rid of all tariffs, open borders, kumbaya kind of situation, right? But again, like, I think that that's really the criticism foundationally of Trump's trade policy, is that he, in terms of China specifically, right, I think having a tough on China stance is good. I think Joe Biden continued a lot of that stuff. He doubled down on it, in fact, with a lot of his investments in domestic manufacturing in this country. And Trump's probably going to do a lot of the same thing with China. So China specifically, like, I don't mind a tough on China stance, even with regards to trade policy. But Trump, again, is not necessarily promising, hey, I'm going to be tough on China. He's promising universal tariffs, even on, like, Gibbs, I mean, he was asked the question on the first day of his presidency. He was asked about tariffs. The first thing he mentioned on tariffs was tariffing Canada. Canada is literally, I mean, if there's a country that's the closest ally to America, whatever country that is, like, it almost certainly has to be Canada. Like, why are we trying to extract concessions from Canada? If anything, we should be doing the opposite, because we have reason to believe that Canada will work with America in good faith, right? That many other European countries or Australia or these, basically the developed world, the Western world, would do those things. So it's just not a fitted policy coming out of the Trump administration. It's blanket. It's total ultimate skepticism. And I don't think that that's right, because we just don't have reason to not trust many governments across the planet. You might say we have reason to not trust most governments. You might say we have reason to not trust many governments, right? Especially China, North Korea, and Iran, all these places. But that's like standard conservatism. That's not what Trump's offering. He's offering like ultimate skepticism, even with countries that we're supposed to be integrating with, not closing our doors to.
Well, all right. That's a good segue into this next part, which I say that we're about to do closings. I got another panel I have to run here in a moment. So let's go ahead and do some closings. We'll start with Pentuple, since Econoboy gave us such a eloquent speech right there, or whatever monologue. Right, let's go to you, Pentuple, for closings. He's muted. Let's go to Non-Fun. Yeah, go. Give us closing thoughts and who you are, where to find you, what you do.
Well, Pentuple's not going to hear me insult him. I mean, yeah, basically, all my predictions seemingly came true. I said that they were going to hyper focus on like localized cost. They did that. With the steel, Azure Baby, is that your name? Did that very evidently. Refused to even answer if there was a net benefit. She refused to even answer if there was any trade-off between the amount of revenue a tariff brings in versus how much we bring manufacturing back. Like, they refused to engage with like my direct argumentation, like I predicted. They deflected to, having this discussion over, what experts believe. I mean, I feel like we did a good job refuting that as well. Most of the arguments they gave were like debunked in real time in front of them. Pentuple can't even track what a sovereign wealth fund is. You can learn more on how to debunk them at my Substack, nonfun.blog. There's a few posts about tariffs on them. Pentuple should read it. If I were to call any of my classmates in like my high school economics class, they would see the flaw in Pentuple's arguments. He wouldn't even let me. He will ask me a direct question like, if tariffs can help certain companies, why don't they bring manufacturing back? And he won't even let me engage with that question and answer it, even though I mentioned exchange rate appreciation, intermediate goods. There's a few other things too, but there's no point going into them. At the end of the day, there's just much better ways to raise revenue. Even if we want to like tax foreign nations or whatever, Google what a DBCFT is, okay? You can find me at Non-Fun on YouTube, Non-Fun420 on Twitch. There's a lot of other tariff debates I do. They're all on my YouTube channel. Go check me out.
All right. Thank you so much, Pentuple. Tell us who you are, where you're at, and give us your closing thoughts.
I'm Pentuple. I'm on Twitch, and I guess just watch and learn over the next 4 years, bros.
Fantastic. Abby, tell us who you are, what you do, and closing thoughts.
Yeah, so I'm Abby. You can find me nowhere because I'm a ghost. Thanks. So, other than maybe X, I post on X occasionally. So, I think what it really boils down to is tariffs aren't all bad. I know that we've talked a lot about universal tariffs and the thought of universal tariffs, but Trump's not advocated universal tariffs at all. So I don't know why we got into that, but selective tariffs can be good in certain situations. And when it comes to the ERS, having that really localized and having experts in place that can really focus on it and make sure that we're getting the money that should be coming into us, so that we're not just pouring money out to other foreign nations, I think would be a great thing. They failed to show why that wouldn't be more efficient to have a specific company doing that. They just fall on tariffs and why tariffs are bad, but that's not really the question. The question is really around the ERS, and it's clearly going to be a thing. We're clearly going to do the tariffs, so it's not a question of whether we should or not, it's a question of how best can we do this. And I think we were able to establish that making that really small agency would be able to make it more efficient so that the Customs and Border Patrol can really focus on what they need to do in regards to deportation.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, and thanks for being here. Always good when a friend comes in handy and helps you out, fill out that panel. Econoboy, take it away. Closing thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I just, I don't know. I guess it is a bit of a bold thing to say that Trump is kind of a dumbass and doesn't really know what he's doing. But I mean, I just don't. I don't. Whenever I see Trump talk about policy issues, I just really don't. I don't see a sophisticated understanding, and I never do. Right? I mean, insofar as he's playing a character, I just. I mean, is he always playing a character? Like, is he like the fucking what's that? What was that famous troll actor from a long time ago? I can't remember. He was like a comedian who would troll people. It was
Jared
like this
Leto.
whole thing.
I say like the Undertaker, always in character, even in real life. Yeah.
Yeah, like I don't, maybe I guess he's in the WWE Hall of Fame. Like maybe that is what's happening. But like, I don't know. I guess
There is an argument for that.
yeah. I mean, I guess overall, I just have a lot of reason to be very skeptical of Trump's policies and his trade policy and his immigration policy specifically. I do think that if he engages in a policy of universal tariffs, or like massive tariffs, like near universal tariffs, I have reason to believe that that'll make things just like worse, period, right? People will pay a lot more money for the goods that they would ordinarily buy. There might be shortages of things, not that there'll be starvation or anything like that, but you might have to change your consumer habits, right? Like maybe things are much more in season than they used to be, right? And I mean, that's something that I think is kind of counter to what he promised, right? Which was to bring down the cost of things, which was to increase the level of plenty around us. I mean, that's what I worry about. And I think I have a lot of reason to be worried about that being an impact of his administration. I think that insofar as those things don't happen, it's insofar as people can convince Trump to not do the things that he said he's going to do. We just have to wait. We're only 2 days in. So, ironically, I haven't heard much. I heard a lot of news yesterday, but not today. I don't know if he took the day off. Maybe he's like a 3-day work week kind of guy. I don't know, but I haven't heard much news about what he's done today. Anyway, that's my thought. Hope you guys enjoyed the debate. Like talking to all you guys. Condoboy.substack.com for my writings, and Condoboy on YouTube. Live and learn, 3 wonks, all that stuff. Had a fun time, Gibbs.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. And it was great. Yeah, so once again, this is our first 2 panels. We're about to be talking here about 15 minutes. I'm going to use the bathroom real quick and grab some water and whatnot. We're going to be talking about, were the Nazis actually socialists or not, here in a moment. The next panel, it's going to be exciting stuff. A little bit more discussion based, a little bit less debate, bro. But thanks for all y'all for joining, and y'all have a good rest of your night. Thank y'all. Woo!
Appreciate it. Oh my god, kill me. 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 Oh my god, kill me, dude. Fuck, I close everything. What's up?
Yeah, good debate. Total non-fun W.
Kill me, dude.
No, I mean, it was a good debate. But, it was annoying because, like, the girl, what's her name?
Azur baby, I think. Something like that.
The girl, she said, I don't know if you noticed, I DM'd you about it, but in her opening statement, she said, we're like, oh, the income tax is so high, we're taxing people even sometimes at 40%. And I'm like, that's just not true. And then I realized she confused the marginal rate with the effective rate.
Oh, probably, yeah.
Yeah. She think you should have like nailed her on that. But like whatever, it's fine. Who cares? Like,
I tried to immediately like go after her and nail her down on one thing, but she's like, "You're just trying to nail me down on one specific thing," and I'm like,
"Yeah,
yes,
you're trying to get specifics. You're trying to like, yeah." Also, I liked that you and Econoboy made the point of like, we already studied this, and you just don't read it. You just don't care, and it's so annoying that Gibbs is just like, people feel like academia cheated them for like a leftist agenda. It's like, okay, one, I don't care about like the average person's schizophrenia. Okay, I just care about the facts. Okay,
yeah,
Mr. Gibbs, I just care about the facts. Okay, right? So just like totally irrelevant. But like also, what leftist agenda by the IMF? What by economists? Like no leftists? What? Like, what are you talking about? It's just so clueless.
So
and you should have cited the like economist polls on
I said it in general. I was going to, but the conversation shifted too quickly. I'm like, I'm not gonna like bring up this again. But
he was. Quintuple got crushed. He was like emasculated the entire debate.
I know.
He had no clue how investment funds work. He was like,
"You're saying we're gonna force companies
stocks?
on the U.S. stock market? Like what? Like what the hell, dude?"
You can buy some stocks. What are you gonna do? Buy other stocks? There are always stocks you can buy. Bro, he's clueless. But yeah.
Oh
it's also funny. I mean, I think the funniest thing was the fact she confused marginal and effective rates. I thought that was funny.
Yeah.
But yeah. No, I mean, good debate. I liked how Econoboy just like completely genocided him on like the point of like you don't even read the studies. But like I wish you guys like defended academia more there in the debate. I liked Econoboy's like spiel about like, you know, sometimes there are just like things that are true, right? Like climate change is not like, you know, oh well, let's have the two sides debate. It's like no, the scientists are just right on climate change. It's not what maybe some of their predictions about like, I don't know, some things were off, but like it is a thing. It is man-made, and it is a serious thing. I don't know why we're like pretending there's room for debate here. But, like vaccines, they just work, and you know, economists they give their lives to study this, and it's so rude, it's so disrespectful to speak about this topic so confidently without having read a single study in your life. Right?
Yeah.
But yeah,
dude, I tried to too. Like I literally said, like I will like
study and debate.
I know. Oh, I should have, but I was like, I will walk you through this. We will read Greg Mankiw together, okay? Like I can walk you through this, okay? But you guys aren't going to do it because you just scream at me when I ask about specifics. Like really?
Yeah. No, but yeah, good debate. Clearly won. You clearly won. No one can watch this and think the conservatives won. Completely clueless.
Truth.
You know, I also liked how she's like, you know, it's so
Mankew's just the one I read.
They don't believe what they're saying. So she's like, I think it's a great idea that Trump is like, you know, making government departments that work hard, that enjoy what they're doing. Like, what the fuck are you talking about, you dumb fuck? Like, nothing specific. Just speaking in generalities. Like, oh, government departments that work hard and research the topic. And it's like, dog, we already have research on this. Like,
I know,
what are you
and it's like, dude, it
about?
was so annoying. Like, I went over, like, here were, like, 3 of Trump's, like, top economists, and, like, they all make, like, egregious, like, errors.
Oh, but
and
there are others,
like,
lol.
she's just
There are
like, yeah,
others,
but
lol.
we're gonna hire so many people. It's like, dog, these are the 3 top economists that Trump hired, and they all are, like, making, like, horrible arguments. The one guy made, like, a literal, like, the accounting error, like, import subtract from GDP, and, like, I mean,
Someone
he
in
did
the
that in
chat
2016.
also, in Admiral Gibbs's chat, someone also made the accounting identity of like argument where it's like, but like the other way around, he said like, you know, oh, if we do tariffs, that bolsters our exports and therefore it increases GDP, and it's like, no, stop. I was trying to explain to him, like my favorite argument is the fact that just like do you think spending more government money increases GDP? Like, obviously not. Or also, GDP equals consumption plus savings plus taxes, right?
So
if we just tax more, you think we increase GDP? No, obviously it's an accounting identity, right? But yeah. People have a hard time grasping GDP. Basic mistake. But,
dude, it was so awesome when that Azure girl was like, how much revenue do you think it would raise if we brought steel back? Like negative 10 billion? Like, I don't know. Like you're
Yeah. Also, I mean, I wish you just cited more studies, because then it would make it clear that like how anti-intellectual they are. It's so gross to me that Gibbs is enabling this. Like, oh well, some people just feel like academia lied to them, so they can just like ignore all fucking studies. What are we talking about? What are we doing? The average person doesn't know what a regression is. They don't know what an R-squared is. They don't know what a p-value is. Why the fuck do we care what they think? Where the fuck do I give a shit? Like. What, like,
Yeah,
are
I
key
know,
values
I
a
know.
fucking leftist invention? What are we doing?
they
what are we
are,
saying?
bro. Accounting, okay, it's a leftist trick, okay? It's
Yeah, all of it. It's just like, yeah, I can believe whatever I want because like truth doesn't exist. This is what I mean by like these people. I don't know if Gibbs is, but like all the Trumpists, they're just like they have I don't know if they support fascist policies. I'm sure if you described fascism to them, they might, like, a lot of them would agree. But like their mentality is fascist. Like it's nothing. No truth exists. No like agreed upon reality is a thing. I can just believe whatever I want as long as it's in my interest. That's like fundamentally totalitarian, right?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Dude, it's so.
We're gonna have 4
God.
years of that.
I
Yeah,
know.
4 years of it. Yeah. Yeah. Bro, 2025 is already 5% over. Like it's crazy.
Yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah.
it's weird, but
Well, Well, yeah. But either way, good debate. I enjoyed it. Econo Boy
Total-
W, non fun W. Total
yeah. No, I
genocide.
told him.
Total
I warned him.
conservative
I need him to get mad. I sent him a DM before, like I need you to say at least 3 slurs in this debate.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Total W. But yeah, I mean, also, I don't know. I still can get over the fact that, like, why? I just don't get this mentality. I just don't understand this frame of mind or whatever, where it's like I don't feel comfortable talking about like the merits of like I don't know, anything without reading a study on it. Why do these people feel like so
I
comfortable
know.
talking about
I
this
don't
stuff,
get
right?
it. Yeah, it's like I would never like have
Like,
this
why would
high
I
conviction or
talk
take
about,
on
like,
anything.
you
Like
know-
if I
Yeah. I want to fucking talk about like, I don't know, dermatology because I've never read a study on it. I don't know the terms. I don't know the stuff. I don't understand it. But these people feel so confident speaking about like, oh yeah, we're gonna get all the experts and they're gonna find the best tariff, the one good tariff. They're gonna find it. They're all gonna look for it. Ever elusive good tariff. They're gonna find it all because they're so happy and hardworking. They're gonna do all the research. I don't know what research means, but like yeah, and also it's so funny that Pentuple was like, they're gonna make a long report of 20 pages. It's like that was so embarrassing. Dog. Like, yeah. Bro, he never reads. Like, oh my, I don't know, just like, humility is a virtue. It's just like, be like, I haven't researched this, and Trump clearly doesn't know what he's talking about. And it's so
how bad do
annoying,
you
all
want a
the Trump
response from Penn? I hear
propaganda
you
where
DM
it's
him a
like,
lot. I have DM'd Pentuple twice in my life. The first time was immediately after the Hippy Dippy debate. The first time I interacted with him, and I said, "Hey, if you're ever up for a debate on tariffs again, I'll happily do so." I think I invited him to do one. And then yesterday, as a troll, I DM'd him saying, "You should read this," and it was a PDF of an economics textbook. He did not read it, by the way, just so we know. Just so it was very apparent he has not read it.
Yeah, he's never read anything. Again, 20 pages is like a long report to him.
Yeah. Also, thanks for the follow,
That's so
etc.
funny.
I appreciate it. Welcome.
Thanks. But also, I mean, yeah, it's just like so anti-intellectual. Like, also, why are we doing the Trump propaganda thing where it's like, the one thing Trump is really good at is negotiating. Yes, negotiating. What a good negotiator. Yes, he got all the concessions from, China? What changed with China?
Dude,
From
I
Turkey?
didn't even, yeah.
Like, you should have hammered them on like, oh, so you're saying France with like one tariff, they didn't do it? Well, what about China and Turkey? Huge markets. Now they do a tariff on the United States. Right?
By the way,
And
I was on Google. Pentuple didn't accuse me of it this time, but I was actually on Google, like looking at the France thing. I don't even think her representation is accurate. It seems like there was like a much
Of course. I don't even believe her for a second. Yeah, I don't believe her for a second.
There was like it was part of like a much broader deal where like multiple EU countries and like India, who I don't think that we tariffed at all, like made this deal where like, hey, we're not going to have like some of the things in digital services.
Yeah. And also, it's like if you think countries trading, it's also like the way they're speaking about this is so clueless and so like.
This is not
what do I
even
want
close
to say?
to
Intuitive in the
tariffs.
sense that like you just speak from intuition without having any background knowledge to rely on. So it's like, oh, if other countries are going to profit from trading with us, we get to tax them a little bit. It's like, what? Why? What? We don't benefit from it. All you're doing when you tax something is you get less of it, so they're going to trade with us less. What are you saying? What are you talking about? You just
Yeah, I know.
say things because you think they sound good. It's like, why do these people get to vote? It's like crazy to me. I don't know. But that's Trumpists for you. Do you think GGG is over?
I doubt it's like over. Like he'll probably, assuming he like apologizes to some degree, like people.
Destiny
obviously-
never apologizes. The guy's a total asshole.
I mean, okay, but this is like, I don't know, it's a big deal. So I would assume if he makes some apology, it doesn't even have to be that great. Like he'll continue to have, I mean, he'll always have some people who watch him. I think if he apologizes, the dip in viewership won't be like super big.
Yeah, I mean,
think
it
he'll-
seems like he lost like what 4K subs, like nothing major so far.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
it's just
yeah.
like I don't know. How do we feel about the Elon Musk Nazi salute?
Dude, the more I watch it, the more I'm like, maybe he was trying to do it. Maybe he was.
No, I think like it objectively was a Nazi salute, right? Like it objectively was like
I mean, it's
very
very
much
clearly
the
like,
way you do a Nazi salute. I just don't know if he intended to do it, if he was just like edgy. I'm like 50-50. I truly don't know. I mean, the guy supports AFD. He's like promoting the fuck out of Nazis on Twitter.
yeah, that's true.
He's like, he was like replying to people who are like, Jews have a thing against whites, and it was like accurate or something, Like, the guy is crazy. It's like, how do we. This is so dystopian. I feel like I'm watching dystopia. It's this. I've never imagined it would be this bad. Right? Like, yeah, I don't know.
It'll be so fun.
It's so bad.
fun. So fun.
No, it's not fun though. Like we have
So fun.
Zuckerberg and Musk and like the TikTok, all the big social media apps, just completely like enabling the right wing who tried a coup. What are we doing? What are we doing? It's like truth is dead. It's like so crazy. It's so crazy.
And
But I
that's
don't
why
know. I don't know.
they'll never engage with me correctly. Okay, they'll never do it. They won't do it.
Yeah.
They refuse to do
Yeah.
it. Dude, that was
Yeah.
it was so insane to me. We increase demand for domestic products, so how are you saying manufacturing's hurt? It's like, okay, well, here's a few causal things. You appreciate exchange rates. You can tariff intermediate goods.
No response.
There are other-
No response.
I know,
Nothing.
yeah.
They have
You
no
won't even-
clue. Yeah. It's like, yeah, they don't care. If you couldn't name a single economist Trump hired that had made mistakes, you'd be like, see, they're so good. But when you can name them, it's like, okay, but who cares? There are so many other people. Like they don't care about the truth. They have no commitment to like being correct, being like virtuous. It's just like whatever is in their interest. Yeah, that's why it's like totally like they enjoy saying absurdities. Like it's just like nothing will convince them. They never read a thing in their life. Right? Like imagine the ERS has like by accident hired like honest economists. So they do the research and it's like tariffs are bad. And they read it. Do you think they'll buy it? Do you think
No,
they'll change their
yeah, they
minds?
won't,
No,
yeah.
of course they won't. It's also the fact that Trump is such a total bully who would just fire people who disagree with him. If the ERS, it's not going to be an independent government agency, so I'm not even going to like have a lot of trust in it. That's not how academia works. In academia, you do a study, you publish it, and like that's it. Like that's not like, oh, this study disagrees with me. The study found like tariffs are good, and therefore we have to silence wage research. Right? That got published. That made economists disagree with it, but they still published it because they are committed to an independent scientific process. But government institutions are not going to be like that, especially when Trump is the president. Of course not. But yeah, they don't care. They don't give a fuck. Yep. Yeah, it's so sad. Meanwhile, they can just say like, "Well, but Trump got elected, so we're in all reality."
So we're gonna
now."
do it
It's like,
anyway.
okay.
So give fuck. You guys were proof. It's like dog kill me, dog kill me.
Yeah.
Dude, it
Like,
was so.
or something. Or it's like,
Yeah.
oh, but they have problems with their electric grid. It's like, okay, that's not. What does that have to do with anything? You just are schizophrenic. You're just like saying completely irrelevant shit just to say shit. It's like so annoying. I don't know. These people are so crazy. But yeah, I don't know.
Okay, well, I'm gonna go.
Yeah, you should
play
watch.
fucking
Maybe
Fortnite.
not on stream. It's 3 hours long, but Unlearning Economics made a second. He made the
The Soul
Thomas Sowell
video?
Part 2
Yeah.
video.
I haven't watched all of it yet
Yeah.
because I've been streaming. But yeah, I respect him too much to watch it on stream. Okay, so, but yeah, I watched some
Yeah,
of it.
it's
It was,
good. It's
you know.
good. Yeah. Well, but either way. So, total non-fun W. Good debate. Good stuff. Quintuple got completely humiliated. And good for you. Bye-bye.
Yeah. All right, bye. Talk to her. Okay. I love streaming. Love you guys watching me stream. I will stream again to maybe not tomorrow because I have college work that I haven't done, but soon. And I have to edit this stuff. So I probably won't stream again tomorrow, but I will stream again the day after. Head over to Gibbs. Appreciate you guys watching. Love all you guys. You know, if you had told me, even a year, well, not a year ago, especially before I started streaming, but even just like 5 months ago, before I was on, but when I was just streaming to like fucking Ophelia and Kaio and Zach. What's up, Zach? That I would be on a debate panel with the Boy, okay? I would have an Boy team up debate panel against, you know, I knew who Gibbs was. I didn't know who Pentuple was until the hippy dippy thing. I'd be like, what? That's crazy. And you guys let it happen. So I appreciate it. See you guys later. Bye, guys.